Chapter 181. Samakina's judgment of Long Houchen's strength was accurate, and he knew that he would definitely succeed. In the face of the samsara of death, even if Long Houchen unleashed the power of the god weapon, he would not be able to hold on for long. After all, the difference in strength was obvious. He was waiting for Long Houchen to be strangled by the melody of death, and a wisp of his soul would fuse into his necromancy domain. Then, the god weapon would naturally fall into his hands. However, just as Samakina began to pay attention to the battle between Long Tianyin and Valefer and was preparing to resist Long Tianyin's attack, something strange happened. Long Houchen, who was engulfed by the samsara of death, suddenly emitted thousands of golden rays from his chest. Even in Long Tianyin's eyes, these golden rays were pure and boundless light attribute, but not in his eyes. The golden rays had a strange quality, a quality that even Samakina was afraid of. Although his necromancy domain originated from himself, as time passed, the reason why the necromancy domain's power kept increasing was because of the souls that died in his domain. The power of these souls was continuously engulfed by the necromancy domain and refined into vengeful spirits, which greatly increased the power of the necromancy domain. Therefore, among the demons, Samakina's necromancy domain was also unique. It was so powerful that even Moon Demon Agars and Star Demon Vasak were in awe of it. His status as the fourth demon god was also established by the necromancy domain. Just now, Samakina had even used the most powerful necromancy domain, the 12 vengeful spirit kings, to instantly break Long Houchen's god's arrival. He could be said to have reached the peak of necromancy after cultivating it to this extent, and he was not afraid of ordinary light attribute energy at all. However, at this moment, he really felt fear. This was because the thousands of golden rays emitted from Long Houchen's chest were crazily engulfing the power of his domain. That's right, it wasn't destroying or dissolving, but devouring. He could clearly sense that the vengeful spirits within his domain were being devoured by the golden light at an astonishing speed. The samsara of death was almost instantly broken. When Long Houchen reappeared in his line of sight, apart from the tens of thousands of golden rays radiating from his chest, there was also a golden pagoda enveloping his body. From the golden pagoda, an incomparably powerful pressure burst forth. This level of pressure was something that Samakina had only felt from the Demon Emperor. A golden light that was 10 times more powerful than before burst forth from the golden pagoda. One could vaguely see platinum-colored vengeful spirits pouncing out of the golden pagoda, tearing at his necromancy domain frantically. At the same time, they were frantically devouring it. In the blink of an eye, it had already spread to the entire necromancy domain. What was this? Samakina panicked. In his panic, he naturally couldn't hold back at all. 12 gray, vengeful spirits that shone with a dark gold color shot out from his back. Each of them grew to a diameter of 100 meters and pounced toward the golden pagoda frantically. The necromancy demon god could sense that if he allowed the pagoda to continue devouring, his necromancy domain would probably be completely destroyed. This power was simply too terrifying. The pressure that the golden pagoda brought him was far greater than that of Long Houchen's Sun Moon Divine Snail Shield during the day. When the golden pagoda appeared, he even had a feeling that he couldn't resist it. It was a divine artifact. Furthermore, it wasn't an ordinary divine artifact. It was a divine artifact that completely suppressed him in terms of attributes. In fact, the necromancy demon god Samakina was really too unlucky. If it had been another demon god, even if it was a demon god whose ranking was much lower than his, he would have already forced Long Houchen to teleport back to the Tower of Eternity. Absolute power was something that Long Houchen couldn't resist. However, the key problem was that Samakina had made a move himself. He was the necromancy demon god, and he specialized in necromancy that was based on the dark attribute. It could be said that he was the strongest in necromancy on the entire continent. However, even though he was the strongest in necromancy now, it didn't mean that he was the strongest in necromancy in the history of the Holy Demon Continent. Although Samakina was powerful, He was nothing compared to the holy demon continent's holy law of necromancy, eternal sleep disaster Electrolux, who was once the son of light and cultivated necromancy with the light attribute and became a disaster for the entire human race. Back then, it was almost the gathering of the entire human race's strength to seal Electrolux and destroy his physical body, but the Tower of Eternity was still intact. The holy law of necromancy, eternal sleep disaster Electrolux fought against the entire human race almost by himself. His degree of terror was no less than that of the Demon Emperor, or even more destructive to humans than the Demon Emperor. The eternal sleep disaster Electrolux cultivated necromancy, and the biggest difference between necromancy and necromancy was summoning. Necromancy was more inclined to summoning, while necromancy was more inclined to destruction and destruction. One was to transform the power of souls into individuals to assist oneself in battle, and the other was to directly absorb the power of these souls to strengthen oneself. Fundamentally speaking, between the two, there was no saying which was stronger and which was weaker. It all depended on one's cultivation. The necromancy demon god Samakina was indeed very strong, so strong that he was ranked fourth among the demons and the #1 necromancer in the world. However, compared to Electrolux, he was not just a little bit weaker. The son of light, the eternal sleep disaster Electrolux with the physique of a god's blessed, even dared to blaspheme the goddess of light. How terrifying was his strength! With his intelligence and wisdom, his research on necromancy had almost reached the extreme, and he had included necromancy in it. He also left behind the existence of the Tower of Eternity, a supreme artifact that could travel through space and planes. It was not something that Samakina could contend with. If the necromancy demon god Electrolux was still alive, then, in his eyes, Samakina was just the soul of a strong person. He was not even qualified to be a one-on-one opponent. The difference in strength was already very obvious. In this case, when Long Houchen triggered the eternal melody and planned to return to the Tower of Eternity. Through the connection with him, the Tower of Eternity immediately felt the huge power of death and the huge number of vengeful spirits in the necromancy domain. For humans, this was a terrifying and destructive power, but for the Tower of Eternity, this was an unparalleled tonic. How huge was the accumulation of Samakina for hundreds of years? And this was the pure power of death itself, so it did not need to be filtered too much. Therefore, the Tower of Eternity was excited. It originally had a strong, autonomous ability and wisdom. So how could it let go of the existence of such a tonic? So, a projection was instantly shot into the space of the holy demon continent, protecting Long Houchen, and at the same time began to crazily eat these tonic things. Samakina was completely unlucky. If he did not pay too much attention to Long Houchen and directly used the necromancy domain, but relied on his own powerful spiritual power to attack Long Houchen, this situation would not have happened. As a supreme artifact, the Tower of Eternity was undoubtedly attractive to the death attribute and vengeful spirits, and it was extremely powerful. The aura of light was also the nemesis of darkness. When Samakina met Electrolux, it was like a girl meeting a hungry and strong man. Yin and Yang complemented each other, and under the great disparity in strength, he could only be. The 12 vengeful spirit kings frantically pounced on the Tower of Eternity. These 12 vengeful spirit kings were Samakina's trump card, evolved after devouring other vengeful spirits for hundreds of years. They even resisted the god's descent before, and it was under the situation where they did not exert their full strength. However, at this time, when they encountered the Tower of Eternity, it was a completely different ending. These 12 vengeful spirit kings were indeed powerful, and the golden light that bloomed from the Tower of Eternity could at most make their bodies tremble, but could not directly absorb their extremely condensed spiritual power. However, when the 12 vengeful spirit kings pounced on the Tower of Eternity, the result was completely different. The golden light that seemed to be harmless to them before suddenly became intense, and the golden color suddenly became incandescent. An indescribably terrifying spiritual shock suddenly burst out from the Tower of Eternity. The 12 vengeful spirit kings let out a shrill scream almost at the same time, and their huge and condensed bodies were actually shattered, turning into countless vengeful spirit fragments that spread in the air. Circles of intense, incandescent white light spread wildly, sucking and devouring these soul fragments. At this time, the light of the Tower of Eternity also completely broke through Samakina's death domain, turning into monstrous golden light that filled the sky and swept back towards Samakina's death domain. It did not only absorb the spiritual power of the death domain, but also the souls of the Emperor's Legion soldiers who had just died in the demon camp were also absorbed in this crazy explosion. This was the power of a supreme artifact. Even if it was just a projection of a supreme artifact, it still displayed incomparably terrifying power. As a supreme artifact, the Tower of Eternity itself had great wisdom. If Long Haochen wanted to truly control it, it would only be possible if he could pass all the tests left by the undead calamity Electrolux and finally reach the top of the tower to accept the inheritance of the holy law of necromancy. The Tower of Eternity itself had a strong sense of autonomy. When it felt that there was something in this plane that could produce great benefits for it, it would not hesitate to reflect the divine light into this world, trying to seize the greatest benefits for itself. Previously, when the 12 Wraith Kings rushed towards the Tower of Eternity with the power of a supreme artifact, how could it not hurt these Wraith Kings? It deliberately did not do so. This was because the Tower of Eternity could feel the power of these 12 Wraiths. If it only attacked them from a distance, they would definitely be scared away. The Tower of Eternity was only a projection, and it could not forcibly absorb these 12 Wraith Kings from a distance. Therefore, it avoided the important point and focused on the trivial point to attract the 12 Wraith Kings to itself. When these 12 Wraith Kings touched the main body of the Tower of Eternity's projection, the Tower of Eternity transmitted to them the most basic power, which was the purest power of a supreme artifact. These 12 Wraith Kings were indeed powerful, but compared to the full power of a supreme artifact, they were nothing. They were directly shaken into pieces. The moment the 12 Wraith Kings were shaken into pieces, the undead demon god Samakina let out a monstrous scream. At this time, he had completely understood that the golden tower in front of him was definitely not something he could contend against. If he did not think of a way, you would not only be injured, but he would also be devoured by this terrifying tower with his huge undead power. Amidst the crazy scream, Samakina suddenly spat out a mouthful of gray blood. Immediately after, the undead demon god pillar in the distance suddenly erupted with an unparalleled intense light. The terrifying gray light formed a huge, ferocious demon in the sky, and it rushed towards the Tower of Eternity in a frenzy. It completely absorbed the undead territory in the air and forcibly withdrew it. This ferocious demon was the most original power of the undead demon god, Samakina. It was also the most original power of the demons, and did not belong to the undead attribute. At the same time, Samakina let out a strange scream. In the demon camp below, thousands of long screams sounded at the same time, and countless black lights were projected from the camp, shooting straight in the direction of Samakina. Including the Bear Veil Far, the other 6 demon gods also arrived behind Samakina at the fastest speed, and each of them connected the power of their respective demon god pillars. The demon god pillars bloomed with different colors, and each transformed into the most primitive form of light and shadow of their own race. The 7 light and shadow shone brilliantly in the sky, exploding with the strongest attack towards the Tower of Eternity. The 7 demon gods joined forces to attack. This was a spectacular scene that had not been seen for nearly 1,000 years. Even the owner of the throne of God of Order and Law, the Knight of the Seal Long Tianin, under this monstrous pressure, was sent flying by the impact. Samakina was already going all out. His scream just now was borrowed from the power of all the demons. That was the bloodline magic that originated from the demon's demonic bloodline. Through this magic, he could instantly draw a part of the original power of each member of his race to replenish himself, thereby erupting with the most tyrannical strength. In this demon camp in front of the dragon-resisting mountain pass, it could be said that the most fundamental strength and core power of the demons were here. Their amplification to Samakina could be imagined. Coupled with his demon god pillars, it instantly allowed Samakina to display the strongest attack he could. He had no choice but to go all out. Once the death domain was completely devoured, and the 12 Wraith Kings were completely absorbed by the Tower of Eternity, then Samakina's cultivation base would be reduced by at least 50%, and his original power would be damaged. It would be impossible for him to maintain his position as the 4th demon god. Therefore, he would rather use bloodline magic to draw the power of his people, causing them to be greatly injured, in order to preserve his domain as much as possible. The power of the 7 demon gods' joint attack was indeed terrifying. This was no longer something that could be described by a simple forbidden spell. The incandescent light around the Tower of Eternity crazily twisted, but did not have the slightest intention of resisting the joint power of the 7 demon gods. Just like that, it crazily devoured all the power of death that could be devoured, including the fragments of the 12 Wraith Kings. Seeing that the 7 forbidden spell-level rays were about to bombard the Tower of Eternity, Long Tianyin in the distance had already completely held his breath. His heart was trembling violently. He could see that Long Houchen was inside the Golden Tower. That tower was not a physical entity, and it was originally flashing with light. However, he was only one person. No matter how powerful the Knight of the Seal was, it was impossible for him to simultaneously resist the joint attack of the 7 demon gods, including the necromancer demon god Samakina and the Bear Veilfar. The terrifying pressure and spiritual power fluctuations made it impossible for him to approach that range. However, Long Tianyin's mouth opened wide in the next moment. Just as the 7 rays of light were about to bombard the Tower of Eternity, the incandescent light suddenly converged. It was completely at the speed of light, and it was not affected by the pressure of the 7 demon gods at all. As the white light converged, whether it was the tower or Long Houchen, they completely disappeared with a whoosh. The all-out attack of the 7 demon gods' origin power completely missed and rushed into the sky. Their joint power was indeed terrifying. That was an all-out attack that mobilized the demon god pillars' origin power. The entire sky became rainbow-colored in an instant, and it did not dissipate for a long time. One could see that all the clouds in the sky within a radius of 1,000 miles had disappeared in an instant. Only the rainbow-colored light shone in the sky, and it did not fade for a long time. The 7 demon gods groaned at the same time, especially the necromancer demon god Samakina, who spat out a mouthful of gray blood again. His face was as pale as a sheet. However, he did not dare to rest at this moment. His hands moved quickly, absorbing the shattered necromancy domain and the remaining soul fragments of his 12 Wraith Kings. At this moment, Samakina could not even cry. More than 40% of his necromancy domain had been devoured in this short period of time. Not only were the 12 Wraith Kings destroyed, but the soul fragments of 5 of the Wraith Kings had also been completely absorbed. This was the result of the 7 demon gods using their origin power to launch an all-out attack in time. Otherwise, the Tower of Eternity would not have left a single fragment for him if he had delayed any longer. Even the Bear Veilfar, who was coveting Samakina's position as the 4th demon god pillar, could not bring himself to gloat at this moment. The shock in his heart was no less than Samakina's. That was just a knight on a golden pedestal. Moreover, the artifact that he had used previously should have been a shield. Why did it turn into a tower? Could it be that this knight on a golden pedestal actually had 2 artifacts? Moreover, that artifact could no longer be described as an ordinary artifact. It had a terrifying restraining effect on the necromancer demon god Samakina. Ever since the start of the Holy War, this was the first time the Bear Veilfar felt so pressured by a human. He did not expect the Knights Templars to have such a powerful trump card. After launching a sneak attack on their main camp, They even plotted against the necromancer demon god Samakina. Samakina had definitely suffered a huge blow this time. He probably would not be able to recover to his previous peak state even after 50 years. As the saying goes, the fox grieves for the hare. Other than Samakina, the other 6 demon gods' expressions were extremely ugly. However, they did not take any further action. Using the demon god pillar to launch an attack from the origin power was also a huge drain on them. On the other hand, what about the Knights Templars? What losses did they suffer in this sneak attack? Even if the 7 demon gods were unwilling to admit it, they knew that their losses were 0. Yes, there were no losses. The 7 demon gods had all attacked, but not a single enemy was left alive. Under such circumstances, who knew what other trump cards the Knights Templars had up their sleeves? They were demon gods, not death warriors. The fear in their hearts far exceeded their anger. None of them wanted to become the next necromancer demon god, Samakina. Therefore, they could only hover in the air as they watched the owner of the throne of God of order and law, the supreme commander of the Knights Templars, the Knight of the Seal, Long Tianin, fly back to Yulon Pass. However, the 7 demon gods did not know that at this very moment, the powerhouses of the Knights Templars were even more shocked than them. Including Long Tianin, no one knew what had happened. To the lower-level knight, they were erupting in earth-shattering cheers. Everyone could see that the demons had suffered a huge loss. However, the higher-level knight only had shock, and confusion in their hearts. They had all seen the Golden Pagoda, but no one knew what it was. They had never heard of the existence of such a powerful artifact among the Knights Templars. Everyone was full of questions, and so was Long Tianin. However, he was more worried about Long Houchen's safety. How much did Long Houchen have to pay to activate such a terrifying power? It was probably the price of his life. If the Tower of Eternity had not chosen to escape from the final attack of the 7 demon gods, Long Tianin would have been even more worried. But did Long Houchen really pay the price? Yes, he paid the price. He paid the price of his spiritual power, increasing exponentially. With a flash of golden light, Long Houchen appeared directly in the first floor of the Tower of Eternity. He almost subconsciously sat down with his legs crossed. Circles of blazing white light rose wildly around his body, and a terrifying amount of light element spiritual power rushed into his body at an astonishing speed. Even if Long Houchen was unwilling to get help from the Tower of Eternity, he had no choice now. The Tower of Eternity could even completely suppress the demon god of death, Samakina, let alone him who only had a rank 8 cultivation base. At this time, Long Houchen only felt like his body was being burned by a raging fire, and the 5 spiritual orifices in his body were all trembling at an astonishing speed. The external light element spiritual power was extremely pure, but it was mixed with some death aura. After pouring into his body, the 5 spiritual orifices needed to continuously filter it in order to completely expel this death aura. On this point, Long Houchen was extremely determined. He could use this light element spiritual power directly, because its essence was also extremely pure. After all, the Tower of Eternity was created by the previous generation's Son of Light, Electrolux. His requirements for the purity of the light element would not be lower than Long Houchen's. However, even if there was a trace of death aura in this light element's spiritual power, Long Houchen would never classify it as his own divine power. Seeing Sun Moon Divine Snail was too important for Long Houchen. The advice he received from Sun Moon Divine Snail was even more helpful to him than the Sun Moon Divine Snail Shield. Guarding one's heart was the most important thing for the Son of Light. Getting the artifact could only enhance one's power, but if one could not guard one's heart, the Son of Light would also be polluted and go astray. Therefore, no matter what kind of power Long Houchen got, the most important thing for him was to keep his heart pure and not be polluted by anything, and naturally not be polluted by the death aura. It was impossible for him to accept the inheritance of the holy law of necromancy, sleeping calamity Electrolux. The sudden influx of spiritual power surprised Long Houchen because it was pure spiritual power instead of concentrated light elements. In other words, this spiritual power was like his own and could completely fit with his body and become part of his strength. Long Houchin had encountered this kind of situation before, but it was not as strong and huge as this time. He faintly understood that this should be a kind of feedback to him after the Tower of Eternity had obtained huge benefits. When a projection of the Tower of Eternity appeared, Long Houchin himself was dumbfounded. The heat in his chest instantly turned into a heat in his whole body. The feeling of burning him completely made him fall into a semi-conscious state. However, his mental strength was much stronger than an ordinary person's. Hence, he could still sense some changes in the outside world, even under such circumstances. In Long Houchin's perception, the Tower of Eternity was like a living body, not like a building or artifact. In the battle with the necromancy demon god Samakina, it had been leading Samakina by the nose. This was most obvious when it used the power of origin to plot against the 12 Wraiths Kings of the necromancy demon god. From the Tower of Eternity, Long Houchin felt a heart-palpitating greed. The entire Tower of Eternity was fully opened, crazily devouring the power of Samakina's territory and the countless wraiths in it. When Samakina realized that something was wrong, he tried his best to launch an attack on the origin with the other 6 demon gods. The Tower of Eternity immediately left with Long Houchin. Even the soul fragments of the Wraiths Kings scattered in the air were no longer absorbed. It had no intention of staying. Because it was closely related to the Tower of Eternity, Long Houchin's feelings were much deeper than those of Samakina or Long Tianin. When the 7 demon gods joined forces to launch an attack on the Tower of Eternity, Long Houchin felt that the Tower of Eternity actually exuded a disdainful emotion. But it still didn't clash head-on. Long Houchin was almost certain that the Tower of Eternity absolutely had the ability to resist that blow, but there was no doubt that the power it had to pay would be extremely huge. Therefore, the Tower of Eternity immediately left with Long Houchin, not because it couldn't compete with the power of Samakina, but because it wasn't worth it. In other words, if the Tower of Eternity resisted their attack, then it would consume a lot of its own energy, and this consumption would be greater than the benefits it gained from the collision. Therefore, after weighing the benefits, the Tower of Eternity thought that there was no need to clash head-on. Therefore, it calmly broke through the space and left with Long Houchin. Even the 7 demon gods couldn't do anything to him. For the Tower of Eternity's performance throughout the process, it gave Long Houchin a chill from the bottom of his heart. The Tower of Eternity was too rational. It was completely interest-centered and didn't consider anything else. Moreover, Long Houchin could clearly feel that the Tower of Eternity had the ability to advance at any time. However, in the past battles, the Tower of Eternity really helped him only once, and that time he was on the verge of death. And it was just a flash. When Long Houchin and Kair faced danger last time, and he tried his best to protect Kair, the Tower of Eternity didn't move at all. But this time, he also had the ability to teleport away, but the Tower of Eternity appeared again after feeling the huge benefits. This kind of feeling was very uncomfortable for the kind-hearted Long Houchin. The appearance of the Tower of Eternity today gave him a deeper understanding of this transcendental artifact. He vaguely discovered that even the soul imprint left by Eternal Sleep Calamity Electrolux couldn't completely control this transcendental artifact. The Tower of Eternity completely had its own wisdom and judgment. In other words, even if he really got the inheritance of Electrolux, when he wanted to do something that was detrimental to the Tower of Eternity or something that consumed a lot of the Tower of Eternity, the Tower of Eternity could still resist him or even not be used by him. If Long Houchin was a person who could be driven by benefits, then he would definitely think that the Tower of Eternity was a double-edged sword. As long as it was used well, it would be of great help to him. The way to use it was very simple. It was enough to maintain a win-win situation with the Tower of Eternity. However, Long Houchin didn't have such an idea in his heart at all. He didn't want to have a win-win situation with the Tower of Eternity at all. This transcendental artifact completely absorbed death energy to strengthen itself, and its benefits were even more unacceptable to Long Houchin. Today, although the Tower of Eternity had severely injured the undead demon god Samakina and had greatly shocked the 7 demon gods of the demons, it also pushed Long Houchen further and further away. It also strengthened Long Houchen's belief that he would never accept the inheritance of Electrolux again. With strong mental control, Long Houchen arranged his own spiritual power into a large net in his body. No trace of death energy could enter his spiritual power. Only the spiritual power that had been completely filtered could be combined with his own spiritual power and enter the spiritual aperture. Doing so would definitely waste a large part of the spiritual power that was trying to integrate with him, but it was more important to maintain the purity of his own spiritual power. Vaguely, Long Houchen felt that there was a spiritual power disturbance in the center of his buttocks, and that was the next step for him to open the spiritual aperture. Chest, lower abdomen, eyebrows, shoulders, these were the 5 spiritual apertures that he had opened. These 5 fulcrums supported his torso and arms respectively. Next, what he needed the most were naturally the fulcrums of his legs. The position of the Huantiao acupuncture point on the buttocks was naturally the most suitable choice. However, what Long Houchen didn't expect was that the Huantiao acupuncture point on his shoulders had begun to feel something just after the acupuncture points on his shoulders were opened. Inspiration and understanding always came and went quickly. Long Houchen naturally wouldn't let go of such a good opportunity. While absorbing the external spiritual power, he carefully felt the restless fluctuations. Even if he couldn't break through in one go, the experience of this feeling was also very beneficial for his future breakthroughs. Time passed by minute. It could be seen that on the first floor of the Tower of Eternity, layers of golden light continued to rush in the direction of Long Houchen from the surrounding tower and constantly integrated into his body. A part was peeled off by him, and a part was absorbed by him. At the same time, the looming golden light began to appear on his body again. If Long Houchen chose to meditate at this time, then he was likely to open the 6th and 7th spiritual apertures in one go. Unfortunately, this was obviously not what he wanted to do now. Therefore, after the spiritual power transferred to him by the Tower of Eternity ended, he also woke up from the state of cultivation. Taking a deep breath, his body naturally floated up. Long Houchen's face couldn't help but show surprise. But after the surprise, there was a trace of unwillingness. He really didn't want to accept the help of the Tower of Eternity anymore, because this help was something he didn't want and couldn't repay. He even decided that he would never set foot on the 3rd floor of the Tower of Eternity. However, he couldn't deny that he had gained great benefits from the Tower of Eternity. After his cultivation broke through to the 8th rank, although Long Houchen had been cultivating, it would take more than a little time to fill the spiritual apertures on his shoulders. Even if he was the son of light and had the constitution of a god's favored, and the speed of absorbing light elements was much faster than ordinary cultivators, it would probably take nearly 2 years to accumulate 20,000 spiritual power. After all, spiritual power wasn't a simple number. For example, if the spiritual power of the 7th rank knight was 1, then the spiritual power of the 8th rank knight was concentrated 1. In other words, there was an essential difference between the 7th rank and the 8th rank spiritual power. Perhaps this quantity of spiritual power was the same in the overall volume and the number of elements, but the more condensed spiritual power, the more powerful it was in actual combat. This was also the strength of the Ling Gang. Therefore, when Long Houchen's cultivation entered the 8th rank, he already had a total of 5 spiritual apertures, but the speed of his spiritual power improvement was slower than before. Because in the process of cultivation, there was an additional process of compression. This time, when he finished his cultivation, he was surprised to find that the 2 spiritual apertures on his shoulders had been filled by 1/3. In addition to the part of spiritual power that he obtained from his own cultivation, the benefits brought to him by the Tower of Eternity, this time, were a total of 5,000 of the purest spiritual power. This was caused by a large part of it after he filtered it himself. Otherwise, the number would be higher. Long Houchen's current total spiritual power was close to the height of 37,000. It could be said to be a leap forward. Turning around, Long Houchin took a complicated look at the statue at the end of the first floor of the Tower of Eternity. After calming himself down, he immediately launched the teleportation. He didn't want to let himself have any nostalgia for this place. Whenever he thought of how the holy law of necromancy, sleeping disaster Electrolux killed countless humans with this transcendental artifact, his heart would inexplicably ache. The golden light shone, and when Long Houchin reappeared in the night sky, the sky was already silent. Fortunately, the golden light only flashed, and because Long Houchin didn't open his spiritual wings, his body immediately fell to the ground after a moment of stagnation. Chapter 182. As his body fell, Long Houchin gently pressed down with both of his palms. At the same time, he took a deep breath, and his body suddenly floated down like a feather. At this time, it was close to dawn, but the sky was still dark. His light spiritual power was too obvious, and in order to avoid complications, he used the most difficult method to control his body. The main reason why he didn't want to be discovered by the demons was that he didn't want the demons to know that he had to return from afar after being teleported to the Tower of Eternity. If this secret was known by the enemy, it would be easy to arrange a strategy to deal with him. Therefore, Long Houchin would rather take a risk. Fortunately, his previous position was not too high, about 400 meters from the ground. After a series of chi lightning and body slapping, he finally managed to slow down his falling speed as much as possible. Seeing that he was about to fall to the ground, Long Houchin's body slightly curled up, and at the same time, he completely relied on his physical strength to kick behind him. It must be known that his current external spiritual power had already exceeded 20,000. Such an all-out explosive kick directly caused an explosion in the air, and at the same time, it once again slowed down his falling speed. His body fell diagonally to the ground, and after a series of rolls, all the momentum was dissipated. He was wearing the epic grade adamantine foundation armor, which also helped him to a large extent reduce the pressure on his body after landing. After a series of rolls, Long Houchin jumped up and flew in the direction of the dragon-resisting mountain pass. His powerful spiritual power had already concealed his figure as much as possible when he returned here. Therefore, it was not until he arrived at the dragon-resisting mountain pass that the Knights Templars of the dragon-resisting mountain pass discovered his return through visual observation. Naturally, there would be no misunderstanding. The adamantine foundation armor on Long Houchin was a symbol of his identity. Moreover, he was the only adamantine foundation warrior who had not returned. Therefore, when Long Houchin climbed up the Yulong Pass, what greeted him was monstrous cheers and countless respectful gazes. Large groups of Knight Templars stared at Long Houchin with blazing eyes and used their fists to fiercely beat their chest armor to show the highest respect for Long Houchin. This was their respect for the new Holy Knight. Even a knight of the Seal Long Tianin did not understand how Long Houchin injured the necromancer Samakina, let alone these ordinary warriors. In their eyes, it was their powerful Holy Knight captain who defeated the enemy's most powerful demon god. Not only that, but the Holy Knight captain wasn't even a divine knight. Therefore, in their hearts, Long Houchin, the acting Holy Knight, had been naturally wiped. At the same time, they were even more confident in this holy war. When Long Houchin stood in front of Long Tianin again, Long Tianin suddenly realized that he was at a loss for words. Back then, he sensed that Long Houchin was fine and should have escaped to another space. But how'd he do it? After reaching the Tier 9, one would indeed have the ability to shatter space for a short distance to a certain extent. However, it could only be done when the space was extremely calm and stable. But what about when Long Houchin traveled through space? When the 7 demon gods joined forces, the space was destroyed to an unknown extent. In an instant, the shattered and torn space almost distorted the entire battlefield. Even under such circumstances, Long Houchin was still able to calmly traverse through space. This was something that Long Tianin couldn't do, absolutely couldn't do. Moreover, Long Houchin had left for such a long time. In other words, he definitely had the coordinates of another space. Otherwise, if he got lost while traveling through space, he would never be able to return. Grandfather. Long Houchen bowed to Long Tianyin like a knight. His attitude was also much gentler than before. When he had been attacked by Samikina, he had sensed Long Tianyin risking his life to save him. And before he was teleported away, he had also seen Long Tianyin's presence. Naturally, the degree of recognition he had for his grandfather was also a little greater. Long Tianyin smiled bitterly. I don't know what to say anymore. What was that pagoda that appeared around you? Long Houchen pondered for a moment, then said, I don't want to lie to you, but this is a secret that I can't tell you. I can only tell you that the only one it can restrain is the demon god, Samikina. Moreover, I can't control it. It appeared on its own. There is only a bridge between us. It was also the one that teleported me away. What surprised Long Houchen was that Long Tianyin didn't pursue the matter. His gaze gradually became calm. Is your body all right? Did Samikina hurt you? Long Houchen shook his head. I'm fine. I can return to the battlefield at any time. Grandfather, it's almost daybreak. The demons will probably launch a retaliatory counterattack. I'm already prepared for battle. Please give the order. Looking at him, Long Tianyin was speechless. He couldn't help but say angrily, What order? Your judgment is wrong. I can tell you clearly that there is a 70% chance that the demons won't attack today. Didn't you see it when you came back? The demon god, Samikina's demon god pillar, has already lost its light. This time, you've severely injured him. His undead domain was even torn apart by your pagoda. What do you want me to say about you? Your grandfather Yang and I told you to hide your strength and not expose your identity. But you hid the abilities that the demons know. Just because of this, you immediately became the focus of attention. You have 2 divine weapons on you. It would be strange if the demons didn't pay attention to you. I estimate that it won't be long before the demon emperor knows of your existence. How can I send you to the battlefield? You said that your pagoda can only target the demon god Samikina. If the other demon gods launch another attack against you, what if something happens to you? Although Long Tianyin was angry, Long Houchen's heart warmed. He could clearly hear the deep concern and worry in his grandfather's words. Grandfather, then I'll just defend the city. Even if the demon gods want to target me at Yulon Pass, they have to think twice. We know that the pagoda can only target Samikina, but they don't. I don't think many demon gods would dare to take this risk. Samikina is a good example. Besides, you can't blame me for this. Gold has to shine. You don't want your grandson to be mediocre, right? At this point, Long Houchen couldn't help but laugh. He looked at Long Tianyin with a somewhat shameless expression. Long Tianyin also couldn't help but smile. He rarely smiled, but looking at his grandson standing in front of him, he really couldn't contain the joy in his heart. After worrying, he saw how powerful his grandson was. It could be said that he couldn't find a single flaw in Long Houchen. He wasn't even 20 years old, but he already had the strength of a tier 8 and had at least 2 divine weapons. Although he still couldn't fully use these divine weapons, given his age and speed of improvement, in a few years he would really have the strength to fight the demon gods head-on. This was his grandson. He was a hero and leader who was bound to leave a strong mark in human history. Taking a deep breath, Long Tianyin said, This time, the demons are afraid of us. According to our calculations, almost all the hell demons in the Emperor's 3 main legions have been wiped out. The Emperor's legion that has lost its magic attack power is like a toothless tiger. There's nothing to be afraid of. Samikina, the demon god of necromancy, was seriously injured by you. He's the strongest among the demon gods outside. Just as you said, these demon gods probably won't dare to act rashly. At most, they'll maintain the current situation. As long as there are no reinforcements, they won't dare to fight us. So, I don't plan to let you continue fighting. Long Houchen panicked. Grandfather, you can't do that. You and Grandfather Yang must keep your word. If you don't let me fight, how am I going to complete my mission of 10 million merit points? I still need to form a new team with my companions and go to the rear of the demons to slaughter them. Long Tianyin stood up and slowly walked in front of Long Houchen. There was a hint of disdain in his eyes. His majestic body looked so imposing. Standing in front of Long Houchen, He gave off the feeling that he was an indestructible mountain. Long Houchin, don't worry. Your grandfather Yang, and I don't think the same way. You're my grandson and my only grandson. You're the son of light, a God's chosen one, the future hope of mankind. If I only protect you under my wings, when can you become the leader of mankind? When can you lead mankind to destroy the demons? What you need to do is to constantly exercise and improve yourself through constant sharpening, just like what you've done before. I believe that you have the ability to protect yourself and create more glory. So, Grandfather won't stop you from going to the battlefield. After 2 consecutive days of fighting, you've scared off the enemy once, causing the demons to lose the opportunity to obtain a large number of corpses to replenish themselves. You've also seriously injured the demon god of necromancy, Samikina, further restraining the momentum of the demon army. Grandfather will remember these 2 great contributions for you. As the Temple Master of the Knights Templars, I have the right to award you with sufficient merit points. So, I've decided to award you 500,000 merit points as a reward for your role in turning the tide of the battle. 500,000 merit points. Long Houchin was shocked, but at the same time, he couldn't help but worry. Grandfather, this isn't favoritism, is it? Bullsh asterisk T. Long Tianyin raised his hand and knocked Long Houchin's head. He scolded with a smile. Go ask around in the Knights Templars. Who doesn't know that your grandfather is the strictest and fairest knight of the seal? I own the throne of God of order and law. If I can't even be fair, how can I continue to be recognized by the throne of God? Don't worry, I'll only give you a small reward, not a lot. Think about it. If it wasn't for you covering the rear, how many of the 50 Mithril Foundation Knight who went with you could have come back alive? Just your action of covering the rear at the cost of your life is worth 500,000 merit points. This is what you exchanged for with your bravery, your life, and your spirit of sacrifice. Although I was very angry at the time, angry that you didn't care about your own safety, but as your grandfather, as the Temple Master of the Knights Templars, you are my pride. Long Tianyin's grandson, you didn't abandon your comrades in the face of danger. You used the most direct action to prove your bravery. Looking at the surging emotions in his grandfather's eyes, Long Houchin's eyes couldn't help but moisten. No matter how strong he was, no matter how calm he was still only 20 years old. To be able to obtain his grandfather's recognition was too important for him. Long Tianyin took a deep breath, calmed his surging emotions, and continued, You've done well, but it's not suitable for you to continue staying here. Your brilliance should shine where it's more needed. Our dragon-resisting mountain pass is unhindered, and you're easily targeted by the enemy. So, after thinking about it, I've decided to give you a mission. After completing this mission, it'll be equivalent to completing millions of merit points. Naturally, you can reorganize your monster hunters. I haven't told you yet, this time when your grandfather Yang returned to the Sanctuary Alliance, he wanted to discuss with the other temple higher-ups how to use your ability to destroy the demon god pillars. How the Alliance can cooperate with you to maximize your strength. Upon hearing that he could reorganize his monster hunters, Long Houchin was so excited that he almost jumped up. Grandfather, then you can issue the mission. No matter what, I will definitely complete it. Long Tianyin said, Don't be so full of yourself. How can a mission equivalent to millions of merit points be so simple? You can go back and rest first. Tomorrow, you will set off to complete this mission. This mission is very simple. You will go alone, and, as the Holy Knight of the Knights Templars, you will participate in the defense of the other 5 temples' impregnable passes. In each impregnable pass, you will obtain at least 1,000,000 merit points, or make a huge contribution like last night. After completing the battle of all 5 impregnable passes, you will naturally meet up with your companions. At that time, the Alliance will definitely give you a new mission. Do you understand? Happiness came so suddenly that Long Houchin couldn't react for a moment. He would head to the other 5 temples' battles and meet up with his companions one by one. Without a doubt, the mission that Long Tianyin gave him was much easier than Yang Haohan's original mission of millions of merit points. Moreover, as he continued to visit the fortresses, he would be able to meet up with his companions one by one. How could he not be excited? At that moment, Long Houchen was so excited that he was speechless. Long Tianyin faintly smiled and said, "Is it because you're thinking about going to the Exorcist mountain pass to meet your little girlfriend that you are so happy?" That's right, the closest place to the dragon-resisting mountain pass of the Knights Templars. Wasn't it the Exorcist mountain pass where the assassin temple was located? Kai, it was there. Chapter 183. Hearing his grandfather's reminder, Long Houchen's emotions fluctuated violently again. He didn't hide his emotions and nodded vigorously. Long Tianyin sighed softly. "It's been hard on you kids. If it weren't for the demons, Grandpa would have already hosted your wedding. Treat her well. That old fellow Sheng Yu doesn't have a good temper." In terms of seniority, Sheng Yu was actually one generation older than Long Tianyin. However, in terms of cultivation, Long Tianyin, who possessed the throne of God, was definitely stronger. Long Houchen nodded repeatedly and said, "Grandpa, can I leave now?" Long Tianyin snapped, "No. All you think about is your wife. Don't you want to spend more time with your grandfather? From now on, you will stay by my side until you leave tomorrow." Hearing his grandfather's words, Long Houchen gradually calmed down. "Grandfather," Long Tianyin waved his hand and said, "I understand. When I was your age, I didn't know how many times more rebellious you were. You've already done very well. However, you have to remember that just because Grandpa supports you in reorganizing monster hunters doesn't mean that I'm worried about your safety. You're my only grandson. Not only do you have to protect yourself for the Alliance, but you also have to protect Grandpa. If the Alliance loses you, they will lose a huge helper. If Grandfather loses you, he will lose his family. Do you understand?" Long Houchen fell silent. He slowly took a step forward and gave Long Tianyin a big hug. Long Tianyin laughed. This was the first time in many years that he had laughed so happily from the bottom of his heart. He knew that from this moment on, he really did have a grandson. Just as Long Tianyin predicted, after dawn, the demons did not attack, but the demon camp was quickly mobilizing. The heavily injured Emperor's legion moved inwards, healing the wounded and dying at the same time. Of course, the 3 forbidden spells were not completely useless to the demon army. At least the corpses that didn't turn into ashes could be used as food. The entire demon army enjoyed a high-class meal made of Emperor's Legion soldiers. Because Samakina was heavily injured, he directly merged with the demon god pillar to cultivate in seclusion. The command of the demon camp was also given to the bear Valefor. However, at this time, Valefor did not dare to overexert the strength of the demons. The reason why he did not immediately start the war was that the food supply had been supplemented to a certain extent, and more importantly, the demons were now weak. Samakina had mobilized the power of all the demons to launch a terrifying attack, causing the demons to fall into a great degree of weakness. The air force of the demon army was almost entirely composed of demons. Under such circumstances, how could they launch a war against the dragon-resisting mountain pass? The battle with Long Tianyin and Long Houchen also made Valefor fully understand the strength and foundation of a human race. He naturally would not advance rashly. At least, he needed to rest for a period of time before he could launch a war again. One day later, when the curtain of night fell again, 2 figures quietly left the dragon-resisting mountain pass, identified the direction, and went straight to the south in the windy and snowy night. Whether it was the death demon god Samakina or the bear Valefor, both did not know that the holy knight of the Knights Templars who brought them infinite surprises had already left. Moreover, now the dragon-resisting mountain pass only had one Knight of the Seal, Long Tianyin, overseeing it. Of course, the real trump card of the Knights Templars was not Long Houchen. The reason why Long Tianyin dared to confront the demon army with such a lineup was naturally because he had something to rely on. After leaving the Knights Templars, Long Houchen and Han Yu felt like they were birds flying high in the sky. They could finally reorganize the team. Long Houchen understood that although on the surface his grandfather had arranged a mission for him, in fact, Long Tianyin simply did not collect his current merit points. In other words, whether he obtained 1 million merit points in each stronghold was something that no one would check. Therefore, after leaving the dragon-resisting mountain pass, it was equivalent to completing a mission to reunite with their companions. Everyone had already been separated for more than a year and a half, and the longing between their companions far surpassed everything else. Moreover, the first stronghold they had to go to was the Exorcist Mountain Pass, where the Assassin Temple was located, and Kair was there. Long Houchen could clearly feel that he was unable to calm down. The strong sense of excitement even caused the spiritual power in his body to fluctuate irregularly, affecting the efficiency of his absorption of the light element in the outside world. However, he was unable to control his emotions. Kair, are you all right? It's been a year and a half. Have you recovered your memories? Did you think of me? Thinking of this, Long Houchen wished he could grow a few more pairs of wings and quickly fly to Kair's side. After leaving the dragon-resisting mountain pass, although they were heading south towards the Exorcist Mountain Pass, they first headed southwest, thus entering the interior of the Temple League. After all, the demon army was eyeing them covetously, and they did not want to encounter any trouble. But after entering the interior of the Temple League, with the Exorcist mountain range as a natural barrier, they could put all their energy into hurrying on the road, heading towards the Exorcist Mountain Pass as fast as possible. The Star King's strength could support 2 people, not to mention that Han Yu had a light physique, and his innate internal spiritual energy was as high as 80. Therefore, the Star King's affinity with him was second only to Long Houchen. With Long Houchen directly replenishing his spiritual energy, they flew towards the Exorcist Mountain Pass as fast as they could. The Exorcist Mountain Pass. The Holy War had been going on for a year and a half, and the battles were getting more and more desperate. Among all the 6 great temples, the Southern Guard Mountain Pass had the most difficulty in resisting the demons, and the Exorcist Mountain Pass was the second. Every human stronghold was led by a temple. Although the Assassin Temple and the Knights Templars had some disparity in overall strength, the disparity was not that big. But the reason why the Exorcist Mountain Pass had such a hard time resisting was because of their profession. Although the Knight couldn't use a mount when defending a stronghold, they were still heavy armor warriors. Once they dismounted, they were still heavy infantry, and guarding the stronghold was like a metal barrier. But the Assassin couldn't. In terms of attack power, the Assassin far surpassed the Knight, but in terms of defense, they were much worse than the Knight. The Assassin was good at hiding, killing, and taking the head of a general among thousands of enemy troops. But attacking and defending were the things they were the least good at, especially in this kind of defensive battle. Therefore, in this battle, the Assassin Temple could be said to have suffered disastrous losses. If not for the Knights Templars' brilliant Angel Knight regiment inside the Exorcist Mountain Pass, the Exorcist Mountain Pass would have already been breached several times. The assistance that the Knights Templars provided to the Assassin Temple was enormous. But after all, the Holy War appeared at 6 strongholds at the same time. Every temple had to first complete their own defense mission before they could have the ability to help the other temple. Among the 72 demon god pillars of the demons, the top 3 demon gods and races did not appear in the Holy War, while the 4th-ranked demon god of death, Samakina, and the 6th-ranked the Bear Veil Far were at the dragon-resisting mountain pass. The Knights Templars were under such enormous pressure. Even if they wanted to help the Assassin Temple, they were powerless to do so. In the past 1.5 years, a third of the Assassin Temple's upper echelons had already died on the battlefield. From Shengyu, almost everyone was injured. Some senior powerhouses of the Assassin Temple had also thrown themselves into the battlefield, fighting to the death with the enemy. Almost every time they repelled the demon's attack, the Assassin Temple had to pay an enormous price. At this time, the Assassin Temple's Temple Master Shengyu stood at the top of the Exorcist Mountain Pass. The Exorcist Mountain Pass was also a natural stronghold. Compared to the dragon-resisting Mountain Pass, his advantage was that he didn't have to worry about the rear. With the demon-resisting mountain range, he didn't need to be afraid of being surrounded by the demons. As long as he blocked the demon army's attack from one direction, it was enough. But compared to the dragon-resisting Mountain Pass, its natural stronghold was a bit worse. The outside didn't have the vile environment to affect the demons. At the same time, the Exorcist Mountain Pass couldn't be compared to the dragon-resisting Mountain Pass, which was more than 200 meters high. On the top of the Exorcist Mountain Pass, all the battlements had already disappeared. They had all been damaged in the continuous war, and the number of magicians that could release magic from the top of the wall was less than 50. This was the last magic power of the Exorcist Mountain Pass. Almost all the powerhouses of the Assassin Temple were resisting the enemy at the top of the Exorcist Mountain Pass. They didn't know how long they could resist. Fortunately, the Exorcist Mountain Pass was seriously damaged, and the demons attacking them were the same. In the last 6 months, the frequency of attacks was no longer as high as before. At this time, Kerr was at the top of the Exorcist Mountain Pass. She was dressed in black without any armor. Her eyes were calm and cold. A year and a half had passed, and she was already a young lady. Her figure was more slender and well-proportioned. Almost all the good points that could appear on a girl could be found on her body. Compared to the time when she separated from Long Houchin and the others, the current Kai was a bit more chilly. Although she was far from being compared to before she lost her memory, at least the slaughter on the battlefield was no longer enough to make her feel frightened. Sheng Lingxin stood on the other side of Shangyu. His complexion was very pale, and his right arm was wrapped in thick gauze. In the Exorcist Mountain Pass, there wasn't even a priest. They could only rely on the doctors to treat their injuries. The severity of the situation could be imagined. "A great-grandfather, let me go," Kai suddenly said to Shangyu. The demons had already attacked the top of the city wall. Both sides had already entered into the most desperate melee. From this, it could be seen that the defense of the Exorcist Mountain Pass had already fallen to the critical point. Otherwise, how could the enemy attack the top of the city wall? The main force of the demons attacking the Exorcist Mountain Pass consisted of Demon Bird, Twin-Headed Demon Vulture, Flame Demon Mantis, Wolf Demon, as well as a large number of Dual Blade Demons and Demon Eye Warlocks. Although the number of experts in this group was far less than that of the dragon-resisting Mountain Pass, they won in quantity. It was also because of the quantity that they had enough corpses as food. Among them, the Demon Bird and Twin-Headed Demon Vulture formed the Air Force. The Wolf Demon led the Dual Blade Demons to the front, while the Flame Demon Mantis and Demon Eye Warlocks attacked from the rear. In contrast, on the side of the Assassin Temple, there was a mixed army of assassins, warriors, and knight. The knight and the warriors were in the front, while the assassins were doing their best to kill. However, in the long course of the Holy War, a large number of magicians and priests had perished under the enemy's preemptive attacks. This made it extremely difficult for the soldiers of the dragon-resisting Mountain Pass to resist the demon's attack, especially the attacks of the Demon Eye Warlocks and the Flame Demon Mantis, which could cause enormous damage to the low-level warriors. For this reason, the Assassin Temple had already organized countless suicide squads to specifically target them. But the demon god in charge of the battlefield wasn't an easy person to deal with. He had long since prepared a countermeasure, and specially organized a team of experts from various races to deal with these suicide squads. Just like the dragon-resisting Mountain Pass, the ninth-step experts of both sides wouldn't easily join the battle. They restrained each other and mutually deterred each other. But this meat-grinder holy war had already caused the Exorcist Mountain Pass to be on the verge of collapse with a cup of water. Even though the Demon Emperor had ordered the demon army to fight a protracted war, to continuously consume the accumulated strength of humanity, and not to rashly enter the territory of the Temple League. That was because he didn't want the human world to be thoroughly destroyed. But this didn't affect the destruction the demons caused to the stronghold and the killing and wounding of the human army. Compared to treating their own people as food, the demons clearly preferred the cleaner humans. Sheng Yu slightly nodded towards Kai "Pay attention to your safety." "In." Kai responded, and her figure flickered, descending from the second floor of the Exorcist Mountain Pass to the first floor of the battlefield. After such a long time, she had long since adapted to everything here, and also adapted to many things after losing her memory. A pitch-black light streaked across the horizon, and a cold aura almost instantly caused the temperature in the air to drop by several degrees. Dressed in black, Kai-Er's purple hair fluttered in the wind, and a huge death scythe quietly appeared in her hand. A deep and gloomy black light burst forth from the death scythe, and a huge black blade of light accompanied her as she descended from the sky. The dual-bladed demons that were frantically climbing up the Exorcist mountain pass were immediately swept away like wheat being cut. All of them that came into contact with the black blade of light were instantly fragmented. A strong killing intent suddenly spread out, and a large number of low-level demons were directly turned into fragments by the death scythe. Kai-Er's awakening of the gods' favored constitution was very different from that of Longhauchen. Longhauchen was the child of light, a god's favored. His awakening was more important in all aspects, including obtaining the goddess of light's favor, increasing his affinity with the light element, and the sublimation of his various qualities. But this wasn't the case for Kai-Er. After Kai-Er's awakening of the gods' favored constitution, the greatest improvement was shown in the death scythe evolved from the sword of samsara in her hand. Since childhood, she had fused with the sword of samsara, and after experiencing an unknown amount of pain and tempering, she gradually fused with this divine weapon. This process could be said to have run through all of Kai-Er's cultivation. As a result, her compatibility with the sword of samsara was far higher than that of Longhauchen and his divine weapons. In terms of amplification, Kai-Er's awakening couldn't compare to Longhauchen's, but in terms of divine weapons, Longhauchen was far inferior to her. Kai-Er's purple hair fluttered even though there was no wind. After losing her memories, she had lost her original cold and frightening temperament. But every time she truly summoned her death scythe, this temperament seemed to return. Kai-Er's killing intent burst forth, and regardless of whether it was the demons or the experts on her side, when they felt this chill, they unconsciously retreated. So much so that with Kai-Er as the center, an empty space with a diameter of several tens of meters immediately appeared. Her beautiful face was expressionless, but her pair of bright eyes were filled with boundless killing intent. When she had just returned to the Exorcist mountain pass, Kai-Er was actually quite repulsed by killing. After all, after losing her memories, she was only equivalent to a young girl. How could it be so easy for her to come into contact with killing? Even with the influence of the death scythe in the depths of her heart, there was still a strong resistance. For this reason, Shang Yu specially let her stay in the wounded barracks of the Exorcist mountain pass for a period of time. Every day, after cultivating, she would go to the wounded barracks to help with some simple work. There, Kai-Er saw too many tragedies. She would never forget the first time she entered the wounded barracks. She saw a soldier who had lost both his legs and an arm, using his remaining arm to stab himself in the chest with a dagger. He had a will, which was personally handed over by Kai-Er to Shang Yu. The will wrote, "Nyonyo Dadu, Daddy loves you, but Daddy can no longer accompany you. Hateful demons attempting to invade our home. Daddy and my companions used our lives to defend our alliance. The alliance is everyone's home. Daddy died a worthy death, but Daddy really can't bear part with you. Daddy really wants to see you and your mother again. I really want to be like before, to have you sit on my lap and hug you. I want to kiss your delicate little faces and watch you wipe your snot on Daddy's face with a naughty smile. Daddy misses you, but Daddy really can't hold on any longer. Listen to Mommy. Daddy's pension should be able to support you as you grow up. You must remember, Daddy's death is for the alliance, for us humans. Daddy hopes to be able to become your pride. If there comes a day when the alliance needs you, then Daddy hopes that you can also pick up your weapons and bravely stand on the walls of the Exorcist mountain pass to fight against foreign enemies. Daddy who will always love you deeply." When she finished reading the will, Kai-Er was sluggish for a full hour. From then on, the fear in her eyes and heart disappeared. In the wounded barracks, she wasn't afraid of dirt or tiredness. She did her best to serve the wounded soldiers. This continued for a full 3 months. 3 months later, Shang Yu found Kai-Er still holding the will in his hand. He told Kai-Er that the pension had already been paid and the original copy of the will had already been sent back. At that moment, Kai threw herself into a great-grandfather's embrace, sobbing uncontrollably. Shunyu calmly told her that an ordinary soldier knew to use his own blood and life to defend humanity's territory. To protect his family, he gave up his precious life, and to not be a burden to the Alliance, he chose to commit suicide. And, as the reincarnation saintess, with such talent, was she really going to stay in the wounded barracks? Killing an enemy meant reducing one of the enemy's attacks, which meant reducing the number of deaths and injuries. She should pour her strength into the battlefield. As long as the demons didn't retreat, the tragedy wouldn't end. When Kai once again stood on the walls of the Exorcist Mountain Pass, the fear in her heart had completely transformed into hatred and loathing for the demons. The killing intent of the Grim Reaper's scythe finally descended once more. Like black lightning, a figure rushed out horizontally, and wherever it passed, a large number of low-level demons were instantly destroyed. Kai was like a black specter. Wherever there were the most enemies, where the situation was the most dangerous, she would appear. The Grim Reaper's scythe was invincible. It was unknown how many demons had died to this divine weapon of hers. Kung, the Grim Reaper's scythe swung horizontally, scattering a dark golden lightning. Kai's body finally stopped. Her gaze landed on a powerful demon bird whose entire body was emitting a dark golden luster. This demon bird's cultivation was at least at the 7th rank. The lightning spear in its hand was aimed at Kai, from afar, lightning coiling around its body. The wings on its back flapped, and it floated in the air not far from the Exorcist Mountain Pass. An icy chill flashed in Kai's eyes, and in the next moment, her figure disappeared into thin air. The terrifying killing intent caused the surrounding light to visibly dim. The powerful dark gold demon bird thrust its spear behind itself almost immediately. Ding, Poochie, the dark golden spear was already close to the might of a human legend rank weapon, but under that pitch-black blade of light, it was sliced apart like tofu. The huge dark scythe cut through its shoulder, cutting its entire body in half. And at this moment, Kai's figure appeared in the air. They were both at the 7th rank, but in front of her, a 7th-ranked demon bird wasn't a threat at all. Her attack power was so formidable that even Long Houchin at the 7th rank couldn't compare to it, let alone these demons. Just as she killed this demon bird, suddenly, an indescribable sense of danger assaulted her heart. Her figure turned halfway, looking in the direction of the demon army. At least 100 rays of light instantly condensed, shooting straight towards Kai's direction. These rays of light enveloped an extremely large area, and even with Kai's speed, it was already too late to dodge. Not only that, besides these rays of light, there were also countless huge fireballs like a meteor shower attacking her. It was very clear that the previous demon bird had the effect of a primer, luring her out of the Exorcist Mountain Pass. Wasn't it the Demon Eye Warlock and the Flame Demon Mantis who launched the surprise attack? They had at least 200 people, and as soon as Kai appeared, they immediately launched their attack. This wasn't the first day that Kai appeared on the Exorcist Mountain Pass's wall. Every time she appeared, the demons would suffer huge losses. Just the experts of the 6th rank and above demons, Kai had already killed nearly 100 of them, and among them, there were even 3 at the 8th rank. This kind of loss had long since made the demons set their eyes on her. At the same time, it also made Kai famous in the Exorcist Mountain Pass as the reincarnation saintess. Facing these spells filled with dark aura, Kai didn't panic in the slightest. Her body slightly curled up, and then a layer of hazy black mist appeared around her body. The Death God Scythe was raised high above her head, descending from the sky, and made a chopping motion. That's right, Kai didn't dodge, but rather made such a simple movement. It could be clearly seen that the moment the Death God's scythe chopped down from the sky, Kai's body unexpectedly disappeared, and the Death God's scythe also disappeared. What remained was only a huge light blade. The surrounding air instantly distorted, and a large number of magic rays were directly refracted by that distorted radiance, scattering in all directions. At the same time, that huge light blade had already broken through the air, forcibly cutting a path through the concentrated magic rays. This was the power of the death god's scythe. Although the current Kai only had the cultivation base of the 7th rank, but by relying on the death god's scythe, she could achieve a small area similar to the might of a domain. All the enemy's attacks would be compressed, gathered, and then broken. The death god's scythe had many characteristics, among which the two most formidable ones were unstoppable and purification. Unstoppable wasn't just a saying. The sharp death god's aura forcibly cut through all the magic rays, and in front of the death god's scythe, these magic rays simply couldn't display the superimposed effect after being shot. Kai's figure once again appeared, a pair of spiritual wings that were much larger than before flapping, bringing her body back to the top of the city wall. Although she very much wanted to rush into the demon army below to behead these magic demons, her reason told her not to do so. Just as Kai's body was about to return to the top of the Exorcist mountain pass, suddenly, her body froze for a moment, and then her whole body felt as if it had fallen into a viscous liquid. This feeling was very uncomfortable. Her body suddenly became sluggish, and even her own spiritual power was greatly compressed in that instant. What's going on? Kai's heart was shocked, and she subconsciously poured spiritual power into the death god's scythe. Also at this time, a mournful black light broke through the air, and its target was the space between her eyebrows. This black light was extremely fast, so fast that it was too much for the eyes to follow. What's more, at this time, Kai's body was in the process of being restrained, and even if she wanted to resist with all her strength, it was already impossible. An enemy sneak attack. This was the first thought in Kai's heart, but what shocked her was that, with her perception and the death god's scythe's killing intent, she unexpectedly didn't discover the enemy's existence. This thought only flashed in her mind, and all she could do was to hold the death god's scythe in her hand horizontally and quickly block in front of her. Ding! In the ear-piercing sound of an explosion, Ka only felt as if she had been hit by a giant awl, and with a muffled groan, blood immediately overflowed from her mouth and nose. Relying on the power of the death god's scythe, although it was only the blade's surface that blocked the enemy's attack, it was still able to completely cancel out the enemy's attribute attack. But even so, it was impossible to completely dissolve the enemy's powerful spiritual power attack. Kai intuitively felt as if her internal organs were burning, and the two hands that were holding the death god's scythe almost instantly lost feeling. The most frightening thing was, after receiving such an intense attack, her body unexpectedly didn't fly out, but was still restrained by that extremely strong stickiness. And the enemy's second attack had already arrived. It could be said that Kai had already reached an extremely critical juncture. Through the first attack just now, she had already determined that the enemy who sneak attacked her was a 9th-stage powerhouse, and only a 9th-stage powerhouse could rely on their powerful spiritual power to not be discovered by her, and also produce such a powerful attack. That stickiness should be the enemy's domain. On the Exorcist Mountain Pass, Shengya had been constantly observing Kai's movements, and suddenly saw Kai's body freeze in the air, followed by that smear of black light. Shengyu realized that things were not good. But everything really happened too quickly, and even with his cultivation, it was already too late to save Kai. The ear-piercing sound of breaking air caused the movements of the soldiers on both sides to become sluggish. They were shocked to see that from the direction of the Exorcist Mountain Pass, the sky unexpectedly split open, and this big hole was still expanding, directly slashing towards Kai's side. Attacking the enemy to save, Shengyu's mind was very clear. The enemy's second attack, he definitely wouldn't be able to withstand it, and no matter how fast he was, he wouldn't be able to stop the enemy's attack in time. So, he could only lock his target on the enemy. If the enemy's attack killed Kai, then his all-out attack would be enough to heavily injure the enemy. And also at this time, no one expected that Kai wouldn't resign herself to death. Her hands were already numb, and her body was still restrained by the domain, but she still effectively launched an action to save herself. A thick layer of black flashed in Kai Er's eyes, and her body unexpectedly disappeared with a whoosh. Meanwhile, the grim Reaper scythe instantly exploded with an incomparably terrifying and dense killing intent, causing the invisible and colorless viscous domain to suddenly be sliced open. The grim Reaper scythe also made use of this crack to drill out. Out of Shang Yu's expectations, the enemy that launched a sneak attack on Kai, it didn't care about his attack at all, and the pitch-black blade of light didn't retract its second attack, but fell on the death scythe. Amidst the ear-piercing sounds of friction and collision, the death scythe violently trembled, producing an intense buzzing sound. Just as it left the viscous domain, Kai was forcibly jolted out of the death scythe. That's right, at that moment, she had fused with the death scythe, and the two fused as one. This was also one of the death scythe's powerful abilities. There was a small space in this artifact, and in times of crisis, Kai could hide in it, using it to avoid the enemy's powerful attacks and rely on the death scythe's tough materials to protect herself. It was precisely because of the existence of this ability that Shang Yu was at ease to let Kai charge on the battlefield. But the enemy's attack just now was also powerful enough to forcibly jolt Kai out of the death scythe. Kai Er's face became even paler, and it was impossible for her not to be injured in that violent shock. However, her numb arms had already recovered, and ice-cold killing intent erupted from her body like a volcanic eruption. The surrounding sky instantly darkened, and a dignified black figure flashed and disappeared behind her. Then, a mournful ray of light streaked across the sky. Death Scythe's 7 Ultimate, first Ultimate, Death's Downfall. Kai had already mastered this attack perfectly. The moment the terrifying Death Scythe's aura burst forth, the surrounding space suddenly collapsed, and the enemy who had ambushed her finally appeared out of thin air. It was an enemy who was thin and small and looked no different from a human. His entire body looked a little illusory, but when he appeared, his entire body was filled with a mysterious aura. Shang Yu's attack was blocked in midair, and a majestic figure appeared in the middle of the sky. Shang Yu was very familiar with this enemy. It was the flaming lion Luo, who was ranked 52nd among the 72 demon god pillars of the demons. The flaming demon mantis was also one of his clansmen. In this head-on clash with Shang Yu, it was clear that Luo was the first to suffer. There was a deep wound that was more than an inch deep on his chest. But in the end, he had still managed to block Shang Yu's all-out attack. However, what Luo didn't expect was that his comrade would fail to kill Kai. Instead, he would be the one being attacked. There was a loud clang, and the body of the thin black demons trembled violently. The weapon in his left hand had already been shattered into pieces. However, at the critical moment, his body suddenly split into two. One of his figures was ground into dust by Death Scythe, while the other figure retreated 50 meters. This was a skill similar to the cicada shedding its carapace. It was used to neutralize Death Scythe. Clearly, he wasn't willing to go head-on against Kai Er's Scythe of the God of Death. It wasn't that Kai Er's attack power was enough to threaten him, but that he didn't want to be assaulted by the powerful purification power of the Scythe of the God of Death. Go! The black demons shouted in a low voice. They took a step forward and disappeared into thin air. The flaming lion Luo didn't stop. His body was like a fiery meteor as he returned to where the demons were. Shang Yu didn't chase after him. Instead, he quickly went to Kai Er's side, shielding his great-granddaughter behind him. His eyes scanned the surroundings vigilantly. Without a doubt, the ones who launched a sneak attack on Kai were the two demon gods. In order to deal with Kai the demons actually sent 2 demon gods to attack. Moreover, they almost succeeded. Kai was gasping for breath. Blocking the enemy's attack and using the 7 absolutes of the God of Death had put a huge burden on her. She was already injured. Just as Shang Yu was about to check on Kai injuries, his eyes revealed a shocked expression, because a golden light was flying over from afar at an astonishing speed. Its target wasn't the top of the Exorcist mountain pass, but the path Luo had to take to return to the demons. This mass of golden light came too fast. The intense light attribute was like the sun had fallen from the sky. The extremely intense light element aura illuminated the entire sky. The demons below and the human powerhouses on top of the Exorcist mountain pass couldn't help but look at the sudden appearance of the golden light. This golden light transformed from a tiny dot of light to a figure in half a breath's time. When it was less than 100 meters away from Enluocien, the surging orange light erupted like a geyser. One could clearly see a huge orange shield directly colliding with Enluocien. Sheng Yu's eyes suddenly lit up. Almost at the same time, he disappeared into thin air. The instant before he disappeared, he gestured to Kai, to retreat. At this moment, Enluocien was a little depressed. In order to save his granddaughter, Sheng Yu had erupted with his full strength. It wasn't that easy to block. Although Enluocien was also a 9th-ranked demon god, he was ranked 52nd. It could be seen that his cultivation was relatively weak among the demon gods. His internal spiritual energy was equivalent to a human's several 100,000, which was inferior to Sheng Yu's. In terms of weapons, he was naturally inferior. Chapter 184. Sheng Yu's Ling Gang had not only injured the surface of his body, but at the same time, the murderous aura of spiritual energy and the sharp aura of the Ling Gang had also drilled into his body. He wouldn't be able to recover without at least 10 days or half a month of recuperation. Just as he was about to retreat and return to his original position, he suddenly felt an enormous aura of light approaching. Furthermore, the other party had clearly locked onto him. Where did this aura of light come from? It didn't originate from the Exorcist mountain pass. Enluocien was shocked and didn't dare to be negligent. An enormous flame suddenly burst forth from his body. His disheveled hair fluttered despite the absence of wind, and tyrannical spiritual energy fluctuations blossomed from his body. In his right hand, a serrated longsword appeared. It went straight for the enemy who had launched a surprise attack. Enluocien originally had 2 swords, but his other longsword had just been smashed by Sheng Yu. Even a demon god didn't necessarily have a powerful weapon, and he often changed his weapons. The pair of long swords in his hands were merely legendary-grade equipment. Compared to the pair of epic-grade daggers in Sheng Yu's hands, there was a huge difference. The moment the huge orange shield was about to collide with Enluocien, it suddenly stopped. Immediately after, Enluocien was horrified to discover that there was an incomparably sharp aura coming from the other party's shield. That powerful force of will did not attack his body, but attacked his mental power. Enluocien felt a wave of dizziness wash over him. It was as if the sharp intent was trying to mess up his thoughts. Under such circumstances, the power of the serrated flaming sword he had slashed out suddenly weakened a little. Boom! The orange light collided, and under the violent collision, the golden figure that was like a meteor chasing after the moon revealed its true form. In the violent collision, neither he nor Enluocien gained the upper hand, and both were forced to retreat. However, Enluocien's situation was clearly worse. When the orange shield collided with his serrated sword, the other party's strength was great, but he could still resist it with his cultivation. However, an incomparably pure, explosive power of the light element came from the shield. It was the light attribute Ling Gang. Not only that, but an extremely sharp willpower also erupted at the same time. Enluocien was already injured before, and suddenly suffering such a collision naturally worsened his injuries. His whole body burst into flames, and the intense flames even dyed the sky red. However, what made him feel at ease was that he could already clearly see a pitch-black light flickering behind the rider on the back of a majestic starlit unicorn. The demon powerhouse who had attacked Kai together with him had also turned back to attack Kai. After the collision, just as the old force dissipated and the new force had not yet recovered, he launched a sneak attack. The knight, whose whole body was shrouded in orange light, had clearly anticipated this. He turned around at lightning speed, and the moment he collided with the dark short sword, his whole body froze in place in the distance. Ding! With a crisp sound, The orange knight's whole body shone with a golden light, and his body, along with the starlight unicorn, retreated in the air. Orange-red halos burst out from his shield. It was obvious that he did not have an easy time withstanding this attack. But at this moment, the flaming lion, Luosien, had already opened his mouth wide, and the dark tip of the sword had quietly emerged from his chest. All assassins were good at seizing opportunities, and this was obviously not unique to the demons who were constantly shuttling through space. As the master of the Assassin Temple and a ninth-grade hero, how could Shengyu not be good at this? The powerful knight, who was wearing the golden foundation armor, had attracted the attention of the two demon gods. Meanwhile, Shengyu had long since escaped into space in the distance. The cooperation between an assassin and a knight had existed since ancient times in the Temple League. When a knight on a golden pedestal and Luosien collided, although Shengyu did not know what Luosien would do, he instinctively believed that the knight would definitely create an opportunity for him to launch a sneak attack. In fact, this was indeed the case. And Luosien's thoughts were disrupted by the powerful sword intent that the knight on a golden pedestal had unleashed with his mental strength, and his internal injuries had been aggravated. When he saw the knight being attacked by his comrade, he had relaxed. This was when Luosien was at his weakest. Shengyu's attack was just a beat slower than that of the demons. This ingenious delay had resulted in a massacre. Boom! And Luosien, the flaming lion demon, was sent flying as he screamed in pain. A demon god's body was indeed strong. Even when Shengyu unleashed his full strength, Luosien's body did not shatter into pieces. However, a large hole about a foot in diameter had appeared in his chest. It seemed like he was not going to survive. However, chivalrous Shengyu had no intention of letting Luosien go. The dagger in his other hand pierced into the back of Luosien's head at the same time as the explosion. A demon god's life force was extremely strong, especially when the demon god pillar was nearby. Therefore, he had to kill his opponent completely to ensure Luosien's death. Luosien died a wrongful death. He never expected that his sneak attack would turn into a counterattack. He did not even have time to borrow the power of his demon god pillar before he was fatally injured. When the same explosion appeared in his head, the last trace of his life force was also gone. Shengyu was much more experienced than Long Haochen and the others. Once Luosien died, his demon god crown was sealed in Luosien's body by Shengyu's spiritual power before his demon god crown could escape. He would use it when he returned. If the demon god crown could not escape, it would be much more difficult for the flaming lion demon to recreate the demons. It would take at least a year for the demon god pillar to recover its vitality and give birth to a demon god seed to choose a successor. If the demon god crown returned, it would immediately be able to find a successor among the demons. It would also be able to bestow a portion of Mr. Luosien's strength to this successor. Speaking of which, when Long Haochen and the others killed the snake demon god, Andamari's demon god crown had been eaten by Haoyue. Long Haochen did not know how well Haoyue had digested it. Just as Shengyu's second attack was about to be unleashed on the other side, an orange-red shield wall once again blocked the demon god assassin, preventing him from rushing over to the flaming lion demon's rescue. The entire battle seemed to have taken a long time to describe, but in reality, it had unfolded in the blink of an eye. From the moment the two demon gods ambushed Kai, to the moment the flaming lion demon and Luosien perished, only a few blinks of an eye had passed. In such a short period of time, when both sides were roughly equal in strength, apart from the sudden arrival of the knight on a golden pedestal, they were able to kill a demon god because of the cooperation between the demon god and Shengyu. This was their first time working together, but there was an invisible tacit understanding between them. They had full trust in each other, which was why they were able to achieve such a good result. The knight on a golden pedestal was riding on his starlight unicorn, constantly retreating in the air. Every time he retreated, the orange-red glow on his shield grew stronger. Shield wall plus divine block plus continuous block. He had perfectly displayed the profound meaning of the guardian knight. Although the enemy's every attack consumed an enormous amount of his spiritual energy, in such a short period of time, the enemy did not have the time to erupt with an even more powerful attack. He could only look on helplessly as Luoxian perished under Shang Yu's sword. In the distant demon camp, apart from the flaming lion demon's demon god pillar, the other 7 demon god pillars simultaneously shone brightly. As for the exorcist mountain pass, the sky suddenly distorted. An extremely swift and fierce murderous aura, like a large net, welcomed the advance of the demon gods. The black silhouette of the night on a golden pedestal abruptly flashed backwards, escaping into the air and disappearing without a trace. The battlefield in the sky was closer to the exorcist mountain pass, and the reinforcements of the assassin temple were clearly a bit faster than the demon gods. If he did not leave now, he would end up like in Luoxian, forever staying here. One should never think that a battle between powerhouses of the 9th step would be incomparably long. The stronger one's strength, the more dangerous the collision would be. Unless one had a terrifying defense like the Bear Veil Far. Otherwise, in a collision between powerhouses of the 9th step, life or death would often be decided in an instant. Withdrawing the shield wall, the knight on a golden pedestal let out a low groan and spat out a mouthful of turbid air. Resisting the continuous attacks of the demon god assassin was not an easy task. If not for the Starlight Unicorn and the epic-ranked golden foundation armor on his body providing sufficient spiritual energy support, allowing his defense to maintain at the level of Ling Gang, at most 3 attacks, his spiritual energy might not be able to support such a high-intensity defense. A powerhouse of a 9th step, moreover an assassin who specialized in offense. How terrifying was his attack power? If it was really a one-on-one confrontation, the knight on a golden pedestal would definitely be in danger. Of course, that was under the condition that he did not intend to escape and only wanted to fight to the death. He and Shang Yu did not retreat, but instead looked at the distant demon god pillars. The air around them distorted even more violently, but not a single figure appeared. The flaming demon lion and Luoxian's corpse was in Shang Yu's hands. The demon god crown of a demon god was a treasure, and with it, he could at least continuously fire a magic cannon for 3 years without running out of supplies, or use it to create epic-ranked equipment. Woo-woo. The horn for the demons to retreat sounded, and the madly attacking demon army immediately retreated like the tide, and the 7 shining demon god pillars in the distance also dimmed. Ha! Shang Yu laughed heartily, delightful. Finally, I can vent my anger. Shang Yu had a fiery temper, and after the Holy War, he had been suppressed in the Exorcist Mountain Pass. Because both sides did not wish for the 9th step powerhouses to join the battlefield, which would lead to more large-scale casualties, the 9th step powerhouses only confronted each other and did not join the battlefield. Thus, no matter how anxious he was, he could not take the initiative to attack. Even mobilizing the city's defenses was done by Shang Lingxin. This great hero always had a feeling that he could not use his strength, and this feeling was not very comfortable. When Kai Er was suddenly attacked, Shang Yu, whose attention had always been on his great-granddaughter, was the first to act. Fortunately, his reaction was fast enough, otherwise, Kai Er would really be in danger. Although the Death Scythe was powerful, the huge gap in cultivation was not something a weapon could completely make up for. To be precise, the more powerful a weapon was, the more powerhouses were needed to use it so that it could truly display its advantages. As for the process of killing the flaming demon lion and Luoxian, even Shang Yu himself felt that it was somewhat unreal. Perhaps in the history of the demons, and Luoxian was probably the demon god who had the easiest way of being killed. And Luoxian's death was not only because of the knight on a golden pedestal's obstruction and Shang Yu's surprise attack, but because he had underestimated the situation. And everything had happened too quickly. Otherwise, as long as he activated the distant demon god pillar, no matter what, he would not have been killed by Shang Yu in a single strike. Unfortunately, in this world, assumptions were the most unreliable. Brother, thanks. This spoil of war belongs to you. Shang Yu was not stingy at all as he handed Luoxian's corpse to the knight on a golden pedestal. The knight on a golden pedestal's body stiffened. "Greetings, Sir Hero. I cannot accept this. Acting Holy Knight of Knights Templars, Long Jingji number 12, reporting for duty." That's right. This knight on a golden pedestal who had obstructed 2 demon gods in succession and created an opportunity for Shengyu to kill the flaming demon lion. Wasn't this Long Houchen? Long Houchen and Hanyu swiftly traveled all the way to the Exorcist Mountain Pass. While they were still far away, Long Houchen's spiritual force sensed the great battle here. He had Hanyu enter the Exorcist Mountain Pass first, while he rode the Star King into the sky to see if he was needed. Although the mission Long Tianyin had given him wasn't too serious, as long as it was within his ability, Long Houchen would do his best to accumulate contribution points. When his attention was focused on the top of the Exorcist Mountain Pass, he almost instantly found Kerr, who was fighting the enemy. The Grim Reaper scythe was the most direct target. Long Houchen was overjoyed. Just as he was about to fly down to meet up with Kai, the scene of Kai being ambushed appeared. What happened next was simple. Long Houchen and the Star King's strength fused as one, rushing down with all their strength, like a golden meteor rushing into the battlefield. There wasn't enough time to save Kai, but because of Kai-Er's crisis, Long Houchen was anxious and raised his strength to the limit. With his many years of battle experience, he had a rather accurate grasp of the battlefield. Seeing that Kai was fine, the 2 demon gods quickly retreated. The place where he appeared was in the enemy's path. That was the scene of the flaming demon lion being killed. Shengyu calling him brother made Long Houchen's eyelids twitch. This was messing up the seniority, so he hurriedly changed the topic. He wanted to hide his identity. Now, clearly wasn't a good time to say who he was. Hearing Long Houchen's voice and words, Shengyu's face immediately revealed a puzzled expression. This voice was very familiar, but he couldn't recognize it immediately. He could only hear that this Jingjin 12 wasn't very old. With his understanding of the Knights Templars, Jingjin 12's pedestal should be in the Knights Templars' treasury. Clearly, this Jingjin 12 was the newly promoted knight on a golden pedestal, but he also said that he was the acting Holy Knight Captain. The position of Holy Knight Captain was second only to the Temple Master and Deputy Temple Master in the Knights Templars. How could a newly promoted knight on a golden pedestal assume this position? However, no matter what doubts appeared in Shengyu's heart, he didn't doubt Long Houchen's identity in the slightest. He had already used his actions to prove it. Let's return to the city walls first. Shengyu waved his hand and flew together with Long Houchen towards the Exorcist Mountain Pass. The tyrannical killing intent and distorted fluctuations in the air also slowly retreated. The Exorcist Mountain Pass Assassin Temple didn't win this battle, but killing a demon god greatly boosted the morale of the soldiers of the Exorcist Mountain Pass. Shengyu flew to the front of the Exorcist Mountain Pass and suddenly lifted the corpse of the flame demon lion in his hand. Immediately, the Exorcist Mountain Pass walls erupted in cheers like a tsunami. Many soldiers were so excited that they shed tears, silently looking at the Exorcist Mountain Pass that was already broken beyond recognition. Long Houchen only felt his heart tighten. As the fuse of this holy war, the Holy Alliance had never uttered a single word of complaint towards him. It was unknown how many soldiers of the Holy Alliance had died in this holy war. I will definitely destroy the demons and restore peace to the holy demon continent. There will be no more wars. Long Houchen secretly vowed in his heart. At the same time, he slowly began to chant an incantation. Shengyu looked at Long Houchen in astonishment. He could feel that the knight on a golden pedestal's body began to emit extremely dense light element fluctuations. Moreover, this degree of purity of light element was something he had never seen before. Long Houchen's chanting voice was very gentle. The incantation's incantation tone was somewhat deep, but wasn't suppressed in the slightest. The clear incantation was like a dancing spirit that constantly spat out. Around his body, a large number of golden specks of light began to surge. Shengyu took a deep breath. His eyes couldn't help but reveal a deep sense of gratitude as he said in a low voice, "Don't force yourself. Long Houchin naturally couldn't answer him, but the incantation he was chanting became increasingly clear. Tiny specks of golden light began to appear around his body. At the beginning, there were only a few dozen of them, and each one was only the size of a soybean. They were unremarkable, but as the light specks continued to increase, everyone was shocked to feel that there seemed to be an additional circle in the sky that could attract all the light attribute in the world. In the sky, near and far, similar specks of light began to appear. They rapidly gathered around Long Houchin's body. Once these specks of light gathered around him, they spiraled into the sky. Shengyu didn't retreat to the top of the Exorcist Mountain Pass's city wall. Instead, he flew into the distance. The demons were paying a price for the Exorcist Mountain Pass, so he had to guarantee Long Houchin's safety. What would he do if another sneak attack from the demons appeared? It wasn't just him. Shengyu didn't even need to issue an order. One after another, distorted figures of light quietly swept out from the top of the city walls. Together with Shengyu, they formed a barrier in midair outside the Exorcist Mountain Pass. Together, they protected Long Houchin, who was continuously chanting the incantation. At this very moment, Long Houchin only felt that his heart was extremely clear. It was as if only by continuously chanting this difficult and lengthy incantation could he weaken the guilt in his heart. He entered a wonderful state. When the incantation started, the spiritual energy in his body was rapidly draining away. The spiritual energy that he had used to block the two great demon gods showed signs of drying up very quickly. However, when golden specks of light began to merge with him in the distant sky, he was astonished to discover that the spiritual energy in his body didn't decrease, but instead rose. It was rising at a slow and steady speed. He had originally planned to chant half of the incantation, so the half-completed incantation naturally continued. At this moment, his spiritual energy and senses were no longer on his own body. Rather, they had merged with the sky, merging with nature and the light element. For the first time, Long Houchin experienced the realm of God that Yi Xiaolei had talked about in the illusory paradise. God was everywhere, but also nowhere to be found. He was now not a caster of magic, but a conductor, commanding the power of God, commanding the light element. The God-favored made him a fulcrum. The emotions of kindness, sorrow, and devotion in his heart became his baton. He deeply experienced the righteousness, peace, kindness, integration, sacrifice, compassion, tolerance, and benevolence of the light element. At this moment, his emotions reached true harmony with the light. At this moment, he had truly become the son of light. The power of light never existed for the sake of killing. Therefore, even if Long Houchin became as strong as the demon emperor in the future, he would not be able to command the light element during an attack like this. But the magic he was casting now was different. It was a release based entirely on unity, tolerance, benevolence, and kindness. Without the slightest bit of selfishness or distracting thoughts, there was only a compassionate heart that wanted to help others at all costs. The spiral-shaped golden specks of light gradually rose into the sky, turning into a huge golden pillar of light with a diameter of more than 100 meters, connecting heaven and earth. At this moment, the demon god pillars in the distant demon camp were completely overshadowed by this golden pillar of light. The surging light element that rose to the sky caused all the demons to tremble. Although they could feel that this light was not aimed at them, as the demons of the dark element, they still felt an uncontrollable panic. Apart from this golden pillar of light, there was no other grand phenomenon. Finally, Long Houchin finished chanting the last syllable. From his body, a dazzling golden light suddenly bloomed with a seven-colored luster. His and the brilliant unicorn's spiritual power, which had been restored to its peak, was completely drained in an instant. However, they were still floating in the air, and their eyes became unprecedentedly bright. The sky turned golden. As far as the eye could see, everything turned golden. Faint golden raindrops began to fall from the sky, slowly drifting down. The raindrops were fine, and wherever they fell, they gave people a kind of gentle feeling. Every raindrop that fell on a person's body would turn into a very faint halo, quietly dispersing. Every raindrop also brought people a trace of gentle warmth. At the beginning, these traces of warmth weren't enough, but very quickly, people discovered that these gentle raindrops brought them an indescribable sense of comfort and tranquility. So much so that everyone would unconsciously look at Long Houchin, who was riding the brilliant star Unicorn King in the air. Each and every one of them gradually calmed down from excitement, and from calmness back to excitement again. It was unknown how many emotions were surging within them. In the eyes of many low-level soldiers of the Exorcist Mountain Pass, the current Long Houchin was like a radiant god that had descended, bestowing warmth upon them, sweeping away their fatigue and pain. A kind of feeling that was close to faith practically took root in their hearts in an instant. The area covered by this fine rain of light was really too large. Not only did it cover the entire Exorcist Mountain Pass, it even covered the battlefield as well as the distant demon camp. The demon god pillar once again shone. To humans, it was an infinitely beautiful radiance, but to demons, it was a fatal disaster. Seventh, similarly, emitting an intense aura of darkness, soared into the sky. With these 7 light pillars as the fulcrum, they formed a dark red light barrier that enveloped the entire demon camp. Without a doubt, the magic Long Houchin had just completed was a forbidden spell. Moreover, its area of effect was so large that even Sheng Yu had never seen it before. At the same time, this magic was also the most gentle forbidden spell that Sheng Yu had ever seen. The 9-step saints of the Temple of the Priests were also able to cast large-scale forbidden spell healing magic. However, the effect of their healing magic was much more direct than Long Houchin's, and the effect was also seemingly greater. Only, it wasn't as gentle as Long Houchin's magic, and its area of effect was also far smaller. To be able to cover a third of the Exorcist Mountain Pass was already something that only the apex experts of the Temple of the Priests could accomplish. However, this forbidden spell of Long Houchin was like a rain. Sheng Yu had a very profound feeling. Bathing in this rain of light, not only did his body benefit, but also his spirit. This cleansing of the spirit, the treatment of inner wounds, was not the slightest bit inferior to the recovery of the body and the healing of injuries. The negative emotions in the hearts of the soldiers of the Exorcist Mountain Pass quietly disappeared under this rain of light, and the injuries on their bodies also healed at a slow pace. Gradually, some of the soldiers began to kneel down on one knee towards Long Houchin in the air, performing their most noble etiquette. And this scene also spread at an astonishing speed above the walls of the Exorcist Mountain Pass. It wasn't only the low-level soldiers who knelt down. Even some experts of the 5th and 6th step were the same. They were completely infected by the spiritual emotions contained in this rain of light. Those who could still stand were those with relatively strong spiritual energy, and their hearts were strong enough to defend themselves. At the same time, there were also a minority of people who weren't affected by the war. Like a miracle, the rain of light descended. Within the Exorcist Mountain Pass, there was basically no need for the commander to issue an order. A large number of injured people were quickly carried to the open space and bathed in the rain of light. Because of this sudden rain of light, the entire Exorcist Mountain Pass was covered in a faint layer of gold. On the light barrier jointly released by the 7 great demon gods, small golden ripples also appeared, and their light barrier that was filled with dark aura was also constantly purified by these golden ripples. The 7 great demon gods were all floating in front of their respective demon god pillars, their complexions grim. At this moment, they didn't feel like they were fighting against a light attribute forbidden spell, but rather, they felt like they were fighting against heaven's might, a heaven's might that was filled with essence, energy. Ka-ur was also the same as the others, standing at the top of the wall, looking at the distant night on a golden pedestal in the air. She obviously wouldn't kneel down, but her eyes were already moist, and tears couldn't help but flow down her cheeks. Bathed in this rain of light, the injury she had previously received gradually improved, and the oppressive feeling in her heart also quietly disappeared. If there was only one person in the Exorcist Mountain Pass who could recognize who this knight on a golden pedestal was, then, without a doubt, that person would definitely be her. She didn't recognize his aura, but she recognized the shield that they had obtained together in the gloomy swamp through life and death. It was spiral-shaped like a snail's shell, and it was filled with the aura of pure light, and it had an epic red-orange luster. Wasn't this the shield of Sun Moon, Divine Snail? It's him. He's here. He's finally here. At this moment, Kar only felt as if her heart was completely pulled by Long Houchen in the air. The memories buried in the depths of her mind finally moved, and with all her might, it wanted to rush out. The seal that had been fiercely suppressing her memories also seemed to loosen a bit. Why? Why don't you let me remember him? Why? The tears in Kai Er's eyes flowed even faster. Looking at Long Houchen in the air, her heart was fiercely aching. This divine rain of light persisted for no less than an hour. The golden color in the sky gradually dispersed, and the warm sunlight sprinkled on the earth. On the Exorcist Mountain Pass, cheers that were twice as loud as when Flaming Devil Lion and Lu Ocean had been killed erupted once again. The Star King spread his wings and glided down to the top of the Exorcist Mountain Pass. Sheng Yu's figure flickered, and he quickly arrived at Long Houchen's side. But he was astonished to discover that after casting such a powerful forbidden spell, the aura of light emitted by Long Houchen's body was even denser than before. Although he couldn't sense any spiritual power fluctuation from his body, it was as if he and his starlight unicorn had been sent to the Exorcist Mountain Pass by the light elements, and the elemental power supported their bodies. This was a kind of realm, a realm that Sheng Yu had never felt before. The spell Long Houchen had just cast was called Divine Rain. This light forbidden spell was something he had discovered while cultivating in the Cave of Illusion. In terms of healing effects, this knight's light forbidden spell couldn't compare to the light forbidden spells of the Temple of the Priests. After all, the knight wasn't a professional healer. However, this Divine Rain spell had its own characteristics. The light rain that Divine Rain triggered was gentler and easier to absorb during healing. Moreover, the healing time was long. By relying on the prolonged healing, not only could it greatly boost the morale of one's side, but could also restore the physical strength of the person bathed in it. At the same time, it could purify the negative emotions in one's heart. In other words, in terms of single healing, Divine Rain couldn't compare to other forbidden spells, but it had many uses. Moreover, Divine Rain could only chant a third of the incantation or half of the incantation to activate the second forbidden spell, Divine Rain. In other words, this was a spell that could evolve, and according to the strength of the caster, it would emit different levels of healing effects. Of course, even if it was Divine Rain, it was still an 8th grade spell of the Guardian Knight. After all, it was an area of effect healing. But the Divine Rain spell that Long Houchen had just cast, in terms of area of effect, purity of light elements, and overall effect, far surpassed the original scope of Divine Rain. That instant of enlightenment and the ignition of his emotions, in addition to the activation of his god's favored constitution, allowed this spell to be cast almost perfectly. Even among the 5 demon pillars of the demons, perhaps only the Demon Emperor, the Moon Demon, and the Star Demon could cast it. The experts of the Assassin Temple responsible for protecting Long Houchen in the air returned to the top of the Exorcist Mountain Pass. On top of the wall, Shang Lingxin had already commanded the officers and soldiers to give way to Long Houchen. When he landed on top of the wall, the experts of the Assassin Temple all subconsciously surrounded him. After casting such a powerful forbidden spell, they were very clear that the knight on a golden pedestal was in a weakened state. The more he was like this, the more they couldn't give the demons any chance to take advantage of him. Of course, looking at it now, the demons really didn't have the strength to mount a sneak attack. When the rain of light ended, the dark red light barrier released by the 7 demon gods was already very dim. Although the demon god pillars were powerful, their main function was to strengthen the demon gods themselves. This kind of large-scale defense consumed a lot of magic power. They weren't fighting against Long Houchen, but heaven's might. The Star King floated to the ground and folded his wings. The first thing he did was to turn his head to look at Long Houchen on his back. His clear big eyes were filled with reverence and gentleness. "Master, thank you." The Star King called him Master wholeheartedly. He followed Long Houchen because of Long Houchen's identity as the Son of Light, not because he approved of Long Houchen himself. It was only because Long Houchen's pure light attribute would bring great benefits to him. Moreover, he could feel Long Houchen's kindness. After following Long Houchen back to the dragon-resisting pass, the Star King wasn't in a good mood. What he saw was the Son of Light killing. Although the ones he was killing were demons, his hands were still stained with blood. But during this period of time, the Star King was truly subdued by Long Houchen. He was Long Houchen's mount, so when he cast the divine rain, it was undoubtedly the clearest and strongest feeling, including all the emotional changes of Long Houchen. When Long Houchen cast this magic, he didn't consider the state of his body at all. His kindness deeply moved the Star King, the kindest light demon beast. Soon after, under the influence of the divine rain, the Star King also felt it the most. Shengyu felt that realm, and so did the Star King. And to him, that realm belonged to the Holy Unicorn. If one looked closely, they would discover that the roots of the white fur on the Star King's body already had a faint golden color. This was a sign that he had begun to evolve into a Holy Unicorn. He believed that as long as he followed Long Houchen, it wouldn't take long for him to succeed in his evolution. Long Houchen jumped down from the Star King's back. At this moment, the spiritual power in his body, including the spiritual power stored in the golden foundation armor, could be said to be exhausted. However, he surprisingly didn't feel weak at all. Right now, he was more like an ordinary person with strong spiritual power. Moreover, the spiritual power he had consumed was quietly recovering. He didn't need to do anything. The light elements from the outside world would automatically enter his body. Moreover, the light elements that dared to enter him were all of the purest kind. It seemed that the light elements with impurities were too embarrassed to come close to him. This saved Long Houchen from having to filter the light elements when he absorbed them. There were a total of 11 people from the Assassin Temple surrounding Long Houchen, including Shengyu. Other than Shengyu, the others were wrapped in black clothes, including their heads. Their bodies, without exception, emitted a magnificent aura. Chapter 185. Just like the Holy Knight of the Knights Templars, the 11 powerhouses of the Assassin Temple were all ninth-step chivalrous assassins. They were also the core strength of the Assassin Temple. Acting Holy Knight of the Knights Templars, Jingji number 12 greets seniors. Please forgive me, seniors. Because of some special reasons, I can't say my name. Long Houchen respectfully saluted the knight. Including Shengyu, the 11 chivalrous assassins returned his salute at the same time. Moreover, it was the most honorable Assassin Temple salute. Shengyu sincerely said, "Welcome, powerful Holy Knight Long Houchen. The Assassin Temple will never forget everything you've brought to the Exorcist Mountain Pass. The friendship between our two temples will last forever. If you need any help in the future, the Assassin Temple will never shrink back." Shengyu's words were very serious. Even Yang Haohan hadn't received such a promise from him. The meaning of his words was very simple. From now on, as long as Long Houchen needed help, the Assassin Temple would do its best to help him. And to be able to obtain this degree of recognition from Shengyu, it was because Long Houchen's divine reign came at the right time. There were many injured people in the Exorcist Mountain Pass. Not only were they suffering from physical pain, their hearts were also suffering. Moreover, under the continuous siege of the demon army, the Exorcist Mountain Pass was always shrouded in a layer of dusky color. The divine rain's descent washed away the soldiers' fatigue, rekindled their confidence, healed a large number of injured people, and even brought life back to the Exorcist Mountain Pass. It could be said that this powerful forbidden spell had greatly reversed the unfavorable situation the Exorcist Mountain Pass was currently facing. If it was said that Shengyu originally believed that the Exorcist Mountain Pass could at most resist for a month, then now, he had the confidence to fight against the demons for another year. Moreover, in Sheng Yu's eyes, the most important thing about the divine sweet rain was not its healing effect, but its healing effect on the soul, sweeping away the haze in the hearts of the soldiers of the Exorcist Mountain Pass. That was why Sheng Yu made such a solemn promise. With this promise, the Assassin Temple would at least do one thing for Long Haochen unconditionally. This was 1/6 of the Temple League's strength. Long Haochen was slightly stunned, but he did not refuse. Once again, he gave Sheng Yu a knight's salute. The reason why he did not refuse was somewhat complicated. To put it simply, it was because of some internal problems of the Temple League. Anyone could see that if the 6 professions of the 6 Great Temple could be perfectly combined, with each stronghold having 6 professions equally distributed, the power to resist the demons would become even stronger. But why was it that they had never been able to achieve this? In the history of the Temple League, it was unknown how many predecessors had tried to promote such a change, but in the end, they had all failed. This was because of the self-protection of the 6 Great Temple. This was something that couldn't be helped. If the 6 Great Temple were to combine, then what would happen to the accumulated resources of each temple? Manpower, resources, everything needed to be coordinated. Although the 6 Great Temple didn't represent the 6 countries of the Temple League, but in fact, each temple was highly autonomous. The Monster Hunter's attempt had already informed the 6 Great Temple of the benefits and effects of combining professions. But until today, the 6 Great Temple were still doing things their own way, each with their own territory, each with their own strongholds. Regarding this matter, Long Tianyin had specially explained it to Long Haochen for half a day. Among the 6 professions, the Temple of the Priests advocated the most. The reason was naturally because the priests' ability to protect themselves was too weak. Apart from the Temple of the Priests, almost all the other 5 Great Temple were against it. The Knights Templars' voice was relatively small. The fiercest were the Assassin Temple, Magic Temple, and Soul Temple. Although after the start of the Holy War, the Temple League had tried their best to adjust the composition of professions among the 6 Great Temple. In fact, the 6 Great Temples still used their own strength to resist the demons. Long Tianyin clearly told Long Haochen that at least for now, this problem couldn't be solved. But it didn't mean that it couldn't be solved forever. If they wanted the 6 Great Temple to truly combine, then there was only one situation that could be achieved, and that was to let the humans have a country, a powerful empire with high centralization of power. Only in this way could the 6 Great Temple be separated from each other, realize the full integration of strength. Of course, to establish such a country, one could imagine how difficult it was. It was almost impossible to unify the opinions of the 6 Great Temple. In the end, Long Tianyin told Long Haochen that if one day he could grow strong enough and establish a strong enough influence in the alliance, then he would have the chance to accomplish this feat. This was also what the Knights Templars wanted to see the most. This was also the reason why Long Tianyin decided to let him go to each temple separately. It wasn't that he wanted him to fight for the support of these temples, but he wanted him to understand the 6 Great Temple. Long Haochen didn't want to be an emperor, but he knew the importance of the integration of the 6 Great Temples' power for the humans. This holy war had greatly damaged the alliance. Although the demons had consumed a lot of energy, all the integration was in the hands of the Demon Emperor alone. Their reproduction speed was also quite terrifying. If the current situation continued, then the humans would continue to be suppressed by the demons. Being able to stay in a corner was already the best situation. Therefore, Long Haochen didn't reject Sheng Yu's promise. Perhaps, in a special time, this promise would play an extremely important role. Long Tianyin carefully analyzed the current situation of the 6 Great Temple for Long Haochen. The Knights Templars were the strongest, this was without a doubt, and the closest to the Knights Templars was the Assassin Temple. The Magic Temple and the Warrior Temple had a better relationship. These 2 forces were also the largest in the alliance. The Temple of the Priests and the Temple of the Soul were relatively independent. Therefore, if they really wanted to unify the entire alliance in the future and centralize power, then they would first have to strengthen their allies and obtain the support of the Assassin Temple. Then, they would influence the other 4 temples. It was still a bit early to say this, but Long Tianyin told Long Haochen that he must prepare for a rainy day. This wasn't some conspiracy, but for the humans to finally defeat the demons. The power of an individual would always be insignificant. Even if Long Haochen could obtain the recognition of the eternal and creator throne of God, could he rely on the power of one person to fight against the entire demons? The answer was obviously no. He needed the support of the entire alliance, and he also needed the power to command the entire alliance in order to have the possibility of launching a counterattack. This, as the leader of the Temple Alliance, Yang Haohen couldn't achieve, Long Tianyin couldn't do it, but Long Haochen had chance. His identity as the son of light and God's favored had given him enough power to rally supporters. Moreover, there was also the temple of the priests that supported the alliance. Just as Long Haochen returned the salute to Sheng Yu and the other chivalrous heroes and recalled his grandfather's sincere words, suddenly, a figure squeezed through the crowd, and the chivalrous heroes didn't stop her. Like a young swallow throwing itself into his arms, the figure directly crashed into Long Haochen's arms and gave him a big hug. Seeing this person, all the chivalrous heroes present were stunned. At first, Sheng Yu was shocked, then his gaze became strange. He finally knew who this holy knight of the Knights Templars who created miracles looked like. He knew his great-granddaughter too well. Other than that kid, who else could make her so emotional and take the initiative to throw herself into his arms? Even after losing her memory, it was impossible for his precious great-granddaughter to fall in love with someone else. However, after figuring out who this knight on a golden pedestal was, Sheng Yu was even more shocked and shocked. For more than a year and a half, he had been teaching Kair with all his might, and Kair didn't let him down. She grew at a shocking speed, and now her cultivation base was as high as level 7 and level 6. In Sheng Yu's opinion, with this level of cultivation speed, she should have already caught up with that kid. He couldn't help but feel proud for a long time. However, the truth was so cruel. When this little fellow appeared in front of him again, she had become a level 8 knight, and a level 8 knight with an epic level adamantine base armor. Did the Knights Templars give him favoritism? Although Sheng Yu was more than 100 years old, his brain was not at the level of being stupid. Favoritism? That spell just now was enough to prove everything. Even if he secretly took out a scroll to cast that forbidden spell, without sufficient strength, it would be impossible to unleash its power. Moreover, he heard the entire process of Long Haochen chanting the spell with his own ears. This little fellow couldn't have already reached level 9, right? This was the question that troubled Sheng Yu at the moment. However, his mood became better amidst this shock. He had no choice but to make the promise just now. In his heart, he actually didn't want to owe such a big favor to the Knights Templars. However, it was different now. The Assassin Temple owed a favor to his great-grandson-in-law. After all, they were on the same side. However, the other heroes didn't know what was going on. Of course, they knew the identity of Kair. She was the reincarnation saint, a rare talent of the Assassin Temple. In the future, the absolute heir of the Assassin Temple, the strongest person. Previously, when Kair escaped from the demon god with her level 7 strength, she had once again proven her strength to the powerhouses of the Assassin Temple. Moreover, in the eyes of these chivalrous men, although Kair was a junior, her coldness was something that no one could approach. This was also a necessary quality for an assassin. However, at this moment, she actually threw herself into the arms of the knight. Even their reincarnation, Saint couldn't resist the charm of this knight. How is this possible? However, these heroes were also experienced people who had roamed the mainland for many years. They clearly saw the gratified smile on Sheng Yu's face after the shock. Since the temple master thought that this was normal, then it must be normal. Therefore, they simply didn't think about it anymore. She had just helped the Assassin Temple, so they couldn't just go and pull Kair away. The Golden Foundation battle armor didn't isolate the softness of Kair's delicate body. Hugging her, the Saint Knight who could cast a forbidden spell and help hero Shang Yu kill the flaming demon lion, and Luoxian trembled. Kair, Kair. Long Haochen softly called out her name, his voice also trembling. His unstable emotions even caused the orange radiance emitted by the golden foundation battle armor to fluctuate irregularly. Cough, cough. Shang Yu coughed. Saint Knight, you just cast a forbidden spell. Why don't you first rest in our assassin temple? He was reminding the young couple in front of him that they were at the top of the Exorcist mountain pass, where everyone was watching. In fact, Sheng Lingxin's eyes were about to pop out of their sockets when he saw the strongest person in the second layer of the Exorcist mountain pass. Seeing his daughter throw herself into his arms, he almost fell from the second layer of the Exorcist mountain pass. He never would have thought that the person was Long Haochen. But in his heart, Long Haochen was his son-in-law. Moreover, he subconsciously thought that a knight on a golden pedestal should be at least 50 years old. What's wrong with Kair? Does she also worship a hero? But, as the military chief of the Exorcist mountain pass, besides glaring, he couldn't do anything else. Fortunately, Kair's mother Lan Yinyu was still resting at home because she was injured. Otherwise, the husband and wife would have to witness this embarrassment. Sheng Lingxin inwardly thought, Kair, don't fall in love with someone else. Otherwise, how can I explain a brother Long? How can I explain a Haochen? However, this acting Saint Knight was really powerful. Why haven't I heard of him before? Did Kair and Long Haochen separate because of Sheng Yu's reminder? The answer was no. What made Sheng Yu and the other heroes not know whether to laugh or cry was that Kair's body disappeared. Invisibility, an assassin's powerful skill. However, this time, it was used for intimacy between a man and a woman. Kair's body seemed to have disappeared, but the touch was still there. How could Long Haochen be willing to let go of her? Just like that, he embraced her. Under the fanatical gazes of the soldiers of the Exorcist Mountain Pass, Long Haochen and Star King left the Exorcist Mountain Pass. Assassin's Temple. It's really you, you stinking brat. When Sheng Yu saw Long Haochen take off his gold foundation battle armor, he still didn't dare to believe it. This quiet room was where Sheng Yu usually cultivated, so naturally, no one would disturb him. After returning to the Assassin's Temple, Sheng Yu directly brought Long Haochen and Kair back to his quiet room. At this time, Kair was nestled beside Long Haochen. Compared to when they separated a year and a half ago, she had developed an incomparably strong attachment to Long Haochen. Although she hadn't recovered her memories, she had already completely faced up to the feelings between her and Long Haochen. Long Haochen was about to kneel and pay his respects to Sheng Yu. Here, he was Kair's lover, and Sheng Yu was an elder, so he deserved to pay his respects. Outside, he represented the Knights Templars, but at this time, in this quiet room, he only represented himself. All right, you're already the Saint Knight Long, so you don't need to pay your respects. How did you cultivate? Could it be that Yang Haohen and Long Tianyin used the great wisdom infusion technique on you? Otherwise, how could you cultivate so quickly? Looking at Long Haochen, even with Sheng Yu's strict temperament, he couldn't help but exclaim in admiration. How old was this child? He hadn't even turned 20 yet. However, he had already become a true knight of the 8th grade. No wonder the Demon Emperor would use him as an excuse to start this holy war. Even if he didn't have the ability to destroy the demon's god pillars, with his growth rate, he would definitely become a mainstay against the demons in the future. Long Haochen said respectfully, "A great-grandfather, I meditated for a period of time and then practiced my skills for half a year." Sheng Yu helplessly said to Kair, "See, you still can't compare to him. Looks like he's worked much harder than you." The boredom of deep meditation wasn't something that everyone could endure. "Kid, don't tell me you meditated for a year straight away." "Ha!" This chivalrous master laughed, but he didn't laugh for long before he stopped because of Long Haochen's serious nod. You really meditated for a year? You?" The wrinkles on Sheng Yu's thin face twitched. "All right, you two can talk. I'm not going to be stimulated here." Saying that, he waved his hand, stepped out, and directly disappeared from the room. Kair giggled. A great-grandfather is jealous. Looking at the smile on her face, Long Houchen's eyes flashed a faint sense of loss. He knew Kair too well. Because of this, from Kair's expression, he could tell that her memory hadn't recovered. She was still the Kair who had amnesia. Kair immediately felt the change in his mood, slightly bowed her head. "I'm sorry, Before she could finish, Long Houchen had already embraced her and said softly, "No, the one who should say sorry is me. I didn't protect you well. In any case, it's really good to see you again." Kair tightly hugged him, softly saying, "I don't know how I felt when I liked you in the past, but I can already be sure that I still like you now. That day, when you left, I felt as if I lost something important. You've already done enough for me. This time, seeing you again, I've already thought it through. Wherever you go, I'll go. I'll definitely be able to convince a great-grandfather. I don't want to see your back as you leave again." Long Houchen gently stroked her long hair. "Don't worry. This time I'll not only bring you away, but we'll also join up with other comrades to rebuild our Commander Grade 64. Kair raised her head in astonishment, saying, "The Alliance allowed it?" Long Houchen faintly smiled, saying, "It's equivalent to tacitly agreeing. However, we must leave enough merit points in every stronghold. I think it should be enough in the Exorcist Mountain Pass. If it's not enough, we can stay for a while longer. It definitely won't be enough." At this time, a light flashed, and Shengyu returned. When Kair saw a great-grandfather, she hurriedly released her arms around Long Houchen, her charming face thoroughly red, angrily saying, "A great-grandfather, why did you come back?" This wasn't the time when she first saw Long Houchen, so how could she not be embarrassed? Shengyu angrily said, "I had no choice but to come back. Just as I left, I thought, a man and a woman alone in the same room. Moreover, it's been a long time since you've seen each other. If you get excited and do something, won't I have to hold my great-great-grandson in advance? That won't do. Shengyu's great-granddaughter. How can I have a child only after I'm officially married?" "A great-grandfather, what are you saying?" Kair's charming face was as red as a ripe apple. In a flash, she arrived at Shengyu's side, grabbing his beard and pulling it. Good, don't pull, I only have a few. You, a great-grandfather, still need to rely on them to maintain my image. Silly girl, I'm doing this for your own good. Isn't a great-grandfather afraid that he'll bully you?" This time, it was Long Houchen's turn to be astonished. Apart from himself, this was the first time he saw Kair being so close to someone else. Even if it was her great-grandfather, he still clearly remembered that before she lost her memory, Kair rejected a great-grandfather. At this moment, looking at the deep familial love between grandfather and grandson, Long Houchen suddenly felt that he was too selfish. Wasn't the current Kai also very good? At the very least, she didn't have that haze in her heart from before, and even gained familial love. Thinking of this, he couldn't help but reveal a knowing smile on his face. That's right. If you love her, you should think for her sake, and not only think of yourself. The ill feelings caused by Kair's memory loss finally began to melt in his heart. Standing to the side, he only smiled without saying a word. "Stinking brat, what are you smiling about? Let me tell you, if you don't stay here for 3 months, don't even think about leaving. I've already received that brat Long Tianing's letter. 1 million merit points. Don't even think about leaving with less. Come, let me first test your current merit points." Looking at Shengyu's crafty expression, Long Houchen immediately made a bitter face. "A great-grandfather, you can't be serious, right? 3 months is too long." Shengyu snorted. "Long? I still think it's too short. If you can accumulate 1 million merit points in 3 months, I'll consider you capable." Long Houchen said helplessly, "But, a great-grandfather, this isn't fair. You promised me today that you would help me. Is this considered helping me?" Shengyu said somewhat proudly, "That's right, I promised you. But do you intend to use this promise now? Don't think I don't know what Long Tianin and Yang Haoan are thinking. If you use this promise now, you won't be able to use it in the future. You better think carefully." Long Houchen cursed inwardly, but there was nothing he could do. Shengyu snorted. "Are you trying to say that I'm a wily old fox?" Long Houchen smiled bitterly and shook his head. I wouldn't dare. You're an elder. I just want to say that ginger is spicier with age. You're amazing. However, I don't need your promise. You can't go back on your word about the merit points I owe you. No matter how you look at it, I deserve half of the credit for killing the flaming demon lion and Luocien. The flaming demon lion is a 9th-ranked demon god. You should have at least 500,000 merit points, maybe even more. I'll have to trouble you to check and split half with me. Oh, and the corpse is another matter. The flaming demon lion's demon god crown demonic crystal should be worth at least 300,000 merit points. If I remember correctly, you've already given it to me. Remember to give it to me. Sheng Yu's eyes widened as he looked at Long Haochen. Brat, when did you become so crafty? No, I'm a little worried about handing my granddaughter to you. With this trump card, Long Haochen immediately became well-behaved. He smiled bitterly and said, "A great-grandfather, you can't do this." Sheng Yu proudly said, "What? Is it difficult for you to stay in the Exorcist Mountain Pass to accompany Kai Er?" Speaking up to here, he glanced at his great-granddaughter in front of him, and his gaze softened. For more than a year, it had always been Sheng Yu teaching Kai Er, and he liked this great-granddaughter of his more and more. Without the previous estrangement, Kai Er also became more and more attached to him, and a true grand-granddaughter relationship was born. This was something Sheng Yu had never thought about before. Although he seemed to be making things difficult for Long Haochen, in fact, he really couldn't bear to let his great-granddaughter leave. Although he also knew that a grown girl couldn't be kept at home, even if it was just one more day, it would still be good. Sheng Yu's gaze was Long Haochen very clearly. He originally intended to argue, but he immediately changed his words. "A great-grandfather, how about this? Our time is indeed very tight. Moreover, after today's battle, the situation in the Exorcist Mountain Pass should be relatively stable. Let's stay here for a month. In this month, I don't need any contribution points. I will definitely do my best to help the Exorcist Mountain Pass deal with the demons. What do you think?" Long Haochen spoke very sincerely, and Sheng Yu's previous mood also converged. He lightly nodded and said, "I knew I couldn't keep you. In fact, everything you did for the Exorcist Mountain Pass today is already worth 1,000,000 contribution points." In fact, this was also the case. The divine protection practically increased the fighting strength of the entire Exorcist Mountain Pass by more than a third, and this was still a conservative estimate. Not only that, it also greatly weakened the demons. Sheng Yu said, "Let's go, you two follow me out. Staying here is too unsafe. Go to a public place. At least it can guarantee my great-granddaughter's safety." Kai Er suddenly stamped her feet and coquettishly said, "A great-grandfather, why did you come again? Hateful, hateful." However, the two still followed Sheng Yu and left the quiet room. Sheng Yu ordered people to arrange a place for Long Haochen to live together with Han Yu. Very clearly, he was a bit on guard against Long Haochen and Kai Er having an overly intimate relationship. In the next few days, the demons outside the Exorcist Mountain Pass were strangely calm. The demons seemed to have laid down their banners and laid down their drums. Among the 8 demon god pillars, apart from the flaming lion demon god pillar that had already lost its master, the other 7 were always flickering with light, as if they were guarding against human attacks. But in fact, the demons being so on guard against the Exorcist Mountain Pass was very reasonable. Long Haochen's large-scale forbidden spell had scared them to death. What they were most afraid of was that Long Haochen would do such a thing when they were attacking. At that time, the 7 great demon gods wouldn't have the ability to protect the entire army. Of course, they didn't know that for Long Haochen, the divine protection was just a one-time deal. If they wanted him to repeat it again, perhaps they would have to wait until his spiritual energy exceeded 200,000 before it would be possible. "Grandfather, the situation inside the pass is currently good. I have already organized people to begin repairing the walls. It is rare for the demons to be so calm. With this buffer time, our Exorcist Mountain Pass's defensive power can be restored by at least 30%. After Sheng Yu, Sheng Lingxin and his wife, as well as Long Haochen, Han Yu, and Kai Er ate dinner together. Sheng Lingxin reported the situation of the Exorcist Mountain Pass to Sheng Yu. Now, the husband and wife already knew that the knight on a golden pedestal was Long Houchen. In order to conceal his true identity, Long Houchen wore the golden pedestal armor every day, not revealing his true appearance. While Sheng Lingxin was talking to Sheng Yu, his gaze would from time to time drift toward his future son-in-law. When he knew that the knight on a golden pedestal was Long Houchen, that inconceivable feeling lasted for several hours without disappearing. How long had it been? At that time, when Long Houchen led his monster hunters to the Exorcist Mountain Pass to carry out the trial mission, he was still so weak and small and needed his protection to fight. But now his cultivation had clearly surpassed him. Although Sheng Lingxin had finally broken through to the 8th step, the age gap was still an entire generation. Sheng Lingxin was also a proud and arrogant person, and he wholeheartedly accepted Long Xingwu, but he didn't expect that even Long Houchen's cultivation had already surpassed him. Sheng Yu faintly nodded and said, "How's the reorganization of the army?" Sheng Lingxin said, "The situation is very good. The originally lightly injured have all returned, and the heavily injured have basically all become lightly injured. Apart from the disabled, the majority of the soldiers have already returned to their original positions. Continue to recuperate while preparing for battle." Sheng Yu nodded and said, "Those whose injuries haven't completely healed, don't let them participate in reinforcing the city's defenses." "Yes," Sheng Lingxin hastily replied. Although he was the military chief of the Exorcist Mountain Pass, the one truly in charge of the Exorcist Mountain Pass was Sheng Yu. With Sheng Lingxin's prestige, it was far from enough to mobilize those heroes of the 9th step. Even if it was the hidden chivalry hall formed of assassins of the 8th step, he wouldn't be able to mobilize them. They needed Ying Suifeng to personally lead them. Sheng Yu's gaze turned to Long Houchen, and his face revealed a trace of a smile, and said, "Our Saint Knight, do you have any good suggestions?" Long Houchen smiled bitterly and said, "A great-grandfather, you're teasing me again. In front of you and Uncle Sheng, how could I have the right to speak?" Sheng Yu's complexion changed, and he said, "Houchen, what you said is wrong. In private, you are our junior. However, no matter when, you must not forget your identity as the Saint Knight Commander. You represent the Knights Templars, and in many cases, being unyielding is necessary. Otherwise, you won't just lose your own face, but the face of the Knights Templars. Do you understand?" Long Houchen's heart shivered, and he respectfully said, "Yes." Sheng Yu said in a deep voice, "Although you're still young, your contribution to the Alliance isn't small at all. Forget your own age. You must bring yourself into the identity of the Saint Knight Commander as soon as possible. Otherwise, the reason why your grandfather asked you to go to the various temples to establish connections will be useless. You are already strong enough. What you need now is the dignity and strength that the Saint Knight Commander should have. Do you understand?" Long Houchen nodded again. Sheng Yu sighed and said, "If possible, I don't want you to shoulder such a heavy burden so early. However, you have already started it, and you can't let it go. It can be said that you are the fuse of this holy war. Although the holy war will happen sooner or later, the Alliance can protect you, not because you are my great-grandson-in-law, nor because you are Long Tianin's grandson. It is because of your own strength, because you have the ability to destroy the demon god pillars. What I said is very direct, even unreasonable and unpleasant to hear. However, this is the most fundamental truth. If it wasn't for your own strength, even if the final result is the same, who knows how many twists and turns you will have to go through in the middle, and you won't be able to pass it so smoothly in one go. So, you must work hard. You are already an 8th Order Saint Knight, and there is no other Saint Knight at your age in the history of the Alliance. We all believe that in the future, you will become the leader of the generation and the true leader of the Alliance. So, no matter when, you must use the strictest method to control yourself. I don't want to hear what you said just now again. Okay, tell me what you think." Sheng Yu's words were very strict, but his words had undoubtedly enlightened Long Houchen. By doing this, he was helping Long Houchen to change his own judgment. He was no longer a lone knight, but a Saint Knight commander representing the Knights Templars. In the entire Temple Alliance, he was one of the top figures. Long Houchin was silent for a moment, then said, "A great-grandfather, Uncle Sheng. I have an idea, but because it is a bit radical, I didn't say it." Sheng Lingxin's eyes brightened. "Let's hear it." In terms of governance, he was the representative of the radical faction of the Assassin Temple. If it wasn't because of Sheng Yu's suppression, perhaps his direction of command would have already changed. When Long Houchin said the word radical, it immediately aroused his father-in-law's interest. Long Houchin nodded and said, "I feel that the Exorcist Mountain Pass loss is so big, besides the disparity in strength. The most important point is that the Assassin Temple's superiority wasn't displayed." After saying this, he paused and looked at Sheng Yu and Sheng Lingxin's reaction. Sheng Yu stared blankly, while Sheng Lingxin's eyes brightened even more, slightly nodding his head. "Go on," Long Houchin said. "The Assassin Temple's superiority lies in attack and not defense. The assassins defending the city walls are completely using sledgehammers to crack a nut. It's like letting a group of magicians charge into the battlefield. The Exorcist Mountain Pass admittedly needs defense, but I think we can change from passive defense to active defense. And offense is the best defense. That day I also saw that in our Exorcist Mountain Pass, there are more than 10 senior chivalrous assassins. With this kind of strength, even if we face the 8 great demon gods head-on, we won't suffer too much, let alone now that we have one less demon god. If we can harass and kill to destroy the demon camp, then when they attack our Exorcist Mountain Pass, their strength will be greatly reduced. At the same time, killing, sneak attacks, and hiding, these are what assassins are good at. Why don't we display all of these advantages? Blindly passively taking a beating will only make us more and more passive. Different professions should use different methods to deal with the enemy." "Well said." Sheng Lingxin slapped his thigh and excitedly said, "Houchin, you and I are thinking the same thing." "Humph." Sheng Yu angrily snorted at the side, interrupting Sheng Lingxin's excitement. Sheng Lingxin somewhat awkwardly turned to look at his grandfather and bitterly smiled. "Grandfather, I'm not saying that your strategy is wrong." Chapter 186. Sheng Yu snorted coldly and said, "Do you think I don't know what kind of person you are? Do you know why I don't support you in ambushing the demons? Because we can't afford to lose them. It's fine if you succeed, but what if you fail? Do you want the Assassin Temple that I leave for my great-granddaughter to be a pile of ruins?" Sheng Lingxin smiled bitterly and said, "But, Grandpa, don't you think what Houchin said makes sense?" Sheng Yu said, "The present cannot be compared to the past. It's time to adjust our strategy." At this point, the hero's eyes revealed a strong, killing intent. Sheng Lingxin was overjoyed. "Grandpa, you agree?" Sheng Yu slowly stood up and looked up at the sky. He said indifferently, "It's a dark and windy night to kill. It's better to catch the sun than to catch the sun. Let's do it today. Go and pass on my order. Hurry all the heroes and Hidden Chivalry Hall members to gather in the courtyard." Lan Yinyu was shocked and said, "Grandpa, isn't this a little too rushed? Let's think it over before taking action." Sheng Yu said proudly, "An assassin's assassination must be unexpected. A truly powerful assassin would always have a thorough plan, no matter what the situation was. There are no unchanging situations, only assassins who don't know how to adapt. If these old brothers of mine still need to prepare for an assassination mission, then they're not worthy of being the leaders of the Assassin Temple. You and your wife will mobilize the troops and make preparations to defend against the enemy's retaliation. Houchin, you, Han Yu, and Kair will assist them." Long Houchin stood up and said, "A great-grandfather, let me go with you. I think the seniors also need a shield." Han Yu and Kai both stood up at this moment, looking at Sheng Yu with resolute gazes, expressing their feelings. Sheng Yu thought for a moment and said, "All right, let's go together." Lan Yinyu still wanted to say something, but she was stopped by Sheng Lingxin's gaze. How could she let her emotions affect her decisions? Long Houchin and Kair were not flowers growing in a greenhouse. Sheng Yu raised his head and looked at the dark night sky. A cold light flashed in his eyes. Vaguely, Long Haochen could feel that there was an invisible aura around Shengyu that was continuously strengthening. It wasn't pressure, but a strange quality that made Long Haochen's hair stand on end. Not long after, black figures appeared in front of Shengyu. Other than the other 10 rank, 9 heroes that Long Haochen had met the other day, there were also 21 hidden hero assassins. They were all rank 8 emperor assassins. Shengyu turned to Long Haochen, Kai'er, and Hanyu. After thinking for a moment, he said, Hanyu, you don't need to go. Stay in the Exorcist Mountain Pass and protect the city with Lingxin. This raid focuses on speed. Your cultivation is slightly low, and speed isn't your specialty. Although Hanyu wanted to fight alongside Long Haochen and Kai'er, he knew that what Shengyu said was the truth. He agreed and unwillingly retreated to the side. Shengyu looked at Long Haochen's dazzling golden foundation battle armor. Without waiting for him to speak, Long Haochen took out a large black cloak and covered his body. The distortion of spiritual fluctuations instantly caused his aura to completely disappear. A smile appeared on Shengyu's face. He thought to himself, this stinky brat must have done many sneaky things. 11 heroes, 21 hidden hero assassins, plus Long Haochen and Kai'er, a total of 34 people. Shengyu said in a deep voice, the demons have been attacking our Exorcist Mountain Pass for so long. It's time to show them some power. This time, we will carry out a surprise attack. There is only one goal, and that is to kill as many high-level demons as possible. I emphasize 2 points. First, no one is allowed to continue fighting. Once you hear my order to retreat, you must immediately retreat. Heroic assassins are responsible for bringing up the rear. Second, do not attempt to kill the demon gods. They are guarding the demon god pillars and are very difficult to kill. Our target is those demons that are above the 5th step. Moreover, we are assassins. This is a surprise attack, not a forceful attack. During the operation, all of you must hide well. I won't say anything else. Let's go. With a wave of his hand, Shengyu's figure flashed. He took the lead and flew out. The other assassins were like phantoms, quietly disappearing behind him. Long Haochen and Kai'er flew out at the same time. Before leaving, he said something to Lan Yinyu in a low voice. Then, he pulled Kai'er's hand and followed them out. Looking at their departing figures, Lan Yinyu sighed. Haochen is really a good child. Shang Lingxin said, what did he say to you just now? Lan Yinyu said, he said that if anyone wants to harm Kai'er, they must first step over his corpse. Shang Lingxin smiled and said, you are a mother-in-law looking at a son-in-law. The more you look, the more you like him, right? Lan Yinyu rolled her eyes at him and said, this son-in-law was not chosen by me. Your daughter made the decision herself. The two of them lived together when they were only 14 years old. What else can I say? Cough, cough. Let's go. We should also go to the top of the wall. I have already ordered the army to assemble. I really want to go with grandfather and the others. What a pity. With Shang Lingxin's cultivation, his family's teachings, and his spiritual stove of returning to childhood, becoming a heroic hidden assassin was not a problem. Unfortunately, he was the military chief of the Exorcist Mountain Pass. How could he leave his post without permission? Hanyu listened to Shang Lingxin's words and repeatedly nodded. He also wanted to go. Although their commander-class Monster Hunt 64 hadn't assembled yet, he was already somewhat impatient to fight together with Long Haochen and Kai'er. The distant demon camp was very quiet. The 7 originally shining demon god pillars had also dimmed a lot. After Sheng Yu quietly brought everyone out of the Exorcist Mountain Pass, they gathered in a dark corner outside the city and arranged the mission. In a moment, everyone scatter and fight separately. Listen for my signal to withdraw. Do you all understand? You all remember, our sneak attack this time's principle is to kill the enemy as much as possible while protecting ourselves. As long as you are all alive after the mission is over, it will be a great merit. This group of powerful assassins used their own method to express their determination to Shengyu. Every one of them raised their right hand and pointed at the space between their eyebrows, then made a throat-slitting gesture. This was an assassin's unique method. When moving, they often couldn't use words to communicate. Hand gestures and movements became the most important way to communicate with each other. This action just now meant that they would use their brains to fight with the enemy, to kill the enemy. Shunyu once again turned to Long Haochen, looked at him, then looked at Kai. Long Haochen immediately nodded to him, expressing that he understood. Shunyu was reminding him to protect Kai and himself. Shunyu waved his hand, and everyone immediately moved. They quietly scattered in all directions. Then all of them disappeared into the darkness of the night. Just as Long Haochen had said, assassins were best at ambushing and assassinating, not fighting openly. The assassins who entered the night were like fish back in the water. The same carefree feeling appeared in the hearts of these powerful assassins almost at the same time. As for how far they could go in this mission, no one thought about it. All they thought about was venting and killing. Kai, go invisible and follow me, Long Haochen said in a low voice. Okay, Kai agreed. Her figure flashed and disappeared into the air next to Long Haochen. With Long Haochen's spiritual power, if he didn't concentrate in one direction, he wouldn't be able to detect her presence. Compared to a year and a half ago, Kai was indeed much stronger. Long Haochen's speed was already slower than the powerful assassins from the Assassin's Temple, but he didn't seem to be in a hurry at all. He took a detour to the side, not rushing to the demon's camp in the shortest distance. Long Haochen, where are we going? Aren't we going to ambush the demon's camp? It's too slow to go around like this. Although a great-grandfather and the others shouldn't be able to find out in a short time. If we fall too far behind, I'm afraid we won't get anything. Kai wasn't anxious because she wanted to kill the enemy, but because she was anxious for Long Haochen. He was the only one from the Knights Templars on this mission. If his harvest was too bad, wouldn't he, the Holy Knight, be criticized? Especially when he had shown his great strength before. Long Haochen said in a low voice, "Don't say anything, just follow me. We'll do our best to make it big." The demon's camp still didn't know that a massacre had begun against them. Almost all the powerful assassins from the Assassin's Temple had been mobilized for a surprise attack. The demons outside the Exorcist Mountain Pass were very different from those outside the dragon-resisting Mountain Pass. Outside the dragon-resisting Mountain Pass were almost all elite demons, including the 3 Emperor's Legion. From this, it could be seen that the overall strength of the Knights Templars was indeed far superior to that of the Assassin's Temple. In the face of so many elite demons, their losses were much smaller than that of the Assassin's Temple. The number of demons stationed outside the Exorcist Mountain Pass far exceeded that of the dragon-resisting Mountain Pass, especially the huge number of dual-bladed demons. Although these low-level demons had limited fighting strength, and in a one-on-one situation, they couldn't even beat an adult man after training, but there were many of them. Therefore, in the demon camp, the periphery was also filled with these low-level dual-bladed demons. Dual-bladed demons had a very low status among the demons. Even when they ate corpses, no other demons were willing to eat their corpses, so they could only devour themselves. Tents were luxurious ornaments for the demon's army. Not to mention ordinary dual-bladed demons. Even rank 5 dark green dual-bladed demons might not be able to enjoy them. The best tents were all transferred to the north, to be used by the demon's army in the dragon-resisting Mountain Pass. The demons outside the Exorcist Mountain Pass had to be at least rank 6 to be qualified to live in tents. This was also the reason why, when Shunyu said that the attack this time was mainly aimed at rank 5 and rank 6 demons, no assassin had mentioned how to look for them. As long as they lived in tents, that definitely wouldn't be bad. Large swaths of the dual-bladed demons were like skeletons inserted into the ground, quietly lying on the ground and resting. They didn't sense that above their heads, a formless figure was quietly passing by. At this time, Shunyu had some doubts in his heart. He was wondering what Long Haochen had gone to do. Originally, he had planned to quietly follow Long Haochen and Kai so as to better protect them. However, when he had just announced the start of the operation, Long Haochen had unexpectedly left with Kai to the side. As the commander of this operation, Shunyu naturally couldn't follow them to take a detour. He needed to be responsible for all the experts of the assassin temple. Helpless, he could only follow the assassins and quietly scatter, rushing into the demon's camp. Just like the surprise attack of the Knights Templars on the demon army, the demon's camp was practically defenseless. Although the power of the 7 great demonic god pillars was restrained, they still had extremely strong probing abilities. Furthermore, there was a huge number of dual blade demons outside. In the eyes of the demon's commanders, if there was an enemy attack, there was no reason they wouldn't discover it. In their eyes, humans were cowardly, and those human experts wouldn't dare to take risks easily. With the demon god pillars by their side, the strength of the demon god pillars would increase by at least 50%. After passing by the dual-bladed demon's camp, there are all kinds of scattered low and mid-level demons, ordinary bird demons, demon eye warlocks, wolf demons, and so on. Going further, he would enter the core position of the demon camp. Sheng Yu identified a relatively large tent and directly broke through space in his invisible state. The demon camp had nearly 1 million demon army stationed there. At its peak, the total number was close to 2 million. Therefore, although the proportion of tents was small, the total number was not small. When attacking, the assassins were scattered, so they weren't afraid of bumping into each other. There were 12 demons living in this tent. At this time, they had already entered dreamland. There was a slight distortion in the air, and the invisible Sheng Yu had already arrived in this tent. At this time, his strength was revealed. He could travel through space and still remain invisible. This was not something that all rank 9 assassins could do. Sheng Yu observed the situation in the tent. All 12 demons were sleeping separately. This tent was quite spacious, and they had a certain distance between each other. As an assassin, he had to be cautious when carrying out any action, even if he knew that the opponent was far weaker than him. Once the invisibility ability was launched, it would disappear immediately. Therefore, it wasn't easy to get rid of these enemies who were at least rank 6 without making a sound. The demons in this tent were all wolf demons. However, they were taller than ordinary wolf demons, and their fur was also dark gold. This was a lower-tier demonic wolf, and its strength varied between the 6th and 7th grades. After thinking for a while, Sheng Yu's figure flashed, and he appeared next to the outermost wolf demon. He was very familiar with the characteristics of various demons. Wolf demons had an extremely strong sense of smell, so he must not let his scent leak out. Otherwise, with the strength of these rank 6 and rank 7 wolf demons, they would be able to detect his presence even in their sleep. A faint black light flashed, and the outermost wolf demon's body trembled slightly, and it immediately lost all signs of life. Sheng Yu's sword could be said to be steady, accurate, and ruthless. He had pierced through the central nervous system of the wolf demon's nape, and directly into the wolf demon's brain. This kind of injury was enough to kill it in an instant. Moreover, in order to not let this wolf demon make any sound, when his short sword pierced into the wolf demon's body, his spiritual energy instantly spread, locking it in place, and directly causing it to enter a stiff state. Then, the short sword pierced into its brain. This process sounded simple, but in practice, Sheng Yu's short sword had to change its spiritual energy at least 3 times. In the world of assassins, this was known as 3 changes in one sword, and was definitely a high-level technique. After launching the attack, Sheng Yu's figure naturally appeared, but he seemed to be a part of the darkness. Not only did he not emit any aura, but even if the wolf demon opened its eyes at this moment, it might not be able to see him in the darkness. The short sword was quietly withdrawn, and not a single drop of blood actually dripped. Almost all high-ranking assassins' weapons were laced with poison. This kind of poison was called ash poison. The ash poison itself wasn't fatal, and if it only cut the opponent's skin, it could even help the enemy immediately bind up the wound. This was because this was an extremely tyrannical fire poison, and once it came into contact with the body, it would immediately emit an intense burning ability. When Sheng Yu's sword pierced into the wolf demon's body, everywhere it passed, the wolf demon's internal body would become charred. This was also why there was no blood flowing out. It was to hide the fact that it had been killed. With its blood vessels completely blocked, it would take at least 2 hours for the wolf demon to gradually show signs of bleeding from its 7 orifices. The assassin's temple studied assassination, and the thousands of years of accumulation wasn't as simple as it seemed. After his successful strike, Shengyu didn't stop at all. Using the same method, he quickly took care of 8 of the wolf demons in the tent. At this moment, something unexpected happened. One of the wolf demons snorted and actually sat up. It stood up and was about to walk out of the tent. Is he going to pee? Shengyu's expression immediately became a little strange. This kind of high-ranking wolf demon's perception was quite strong. Perhaps he couldn't sense it because he hadn't woken up from his sleep, but once he went out to pee and was blown by the cold wind, he would definitely be much more awake when he came back. At that time, he would definitely notice that the situation in the tent had changed. How could he not know whether his companions were breathing or not? However, Shengyu didn't act rashly. He watched as the wolf demon walked out of the tent. Then, he flickered like a black lightning and quickly took care of the remaining 3 sleeping wolf demons. His figure flickered and he hid in the darkness. Not long after, the wolf demon that went out to pee lifted the tent's curtain and came back. Sure enough, its eyes were a little sober. Just as it was walking towards its bed, it suddenly felt that something was wrong and subconsciously looked at its companions. At this time, a blazing feeling suddenly erupted in his mind. The next moment, his world turned pitch black. A cold glint flickered in the depths of Shengyu's eyes. A black light flashed on his wrist, and he quickly collected the corpses of the 12 wolf demon lords. This was not only to prevent their aura from leaking after death, but also because they were high-ranking demons. Their magic crystals could be directly used in the magic cannons. The magic cannons of the Exorcist Mountain Pass have been silent for a year. If the dozens of magic cannons could be used again, would they still need to be afraid of those hateful demon eye warlocks? The same massacre occurred almost simultaneously in various parts of the demon's camp. Every assassin had their own assassination method, but without exception, they didn't make any sound. Long Haochen didn't enter the demon's camp with Kai but instead hid outside the demon camp. He didn't even have the intention to take any action and just quietly stared at the movements inside the demon camp. At this time, he and Kai were on the outskirts of the demon's camp, but they were inside the dual-bladed demons and low-ranking demons. With Long Haochen's cultivation, it wasn't difficult for him to sneak in without making a sound. Although Kai was puzzled as to why Long Haochen didn't make a move, she didn't ask any more questions. This was trust. It wasn't because of the feelings between them, but because they were teammates and comrades in arms. Long Haochen could be said to have outstanding military service in the commander-level Monster Hunt 64. During the continuous operations, all the members had long since been completely convinced by him. Even the amnesiac Kai was the same. Long Haochen was hiding at this time, so he must have a purpose. Quietly sensing everything around him, Long Haochen opened his spiritual force to the maximum. Apart from not probing the demon god pillars, he spread his perception as far as possible. Admiration gradually appeared in his heart. In his perception, none of the assassins in this operation had appeared. In other words, even with his spiritual force, he couldn't sense where the assassins were. Although the demon's camp was very big, Long Haochen's spiritual force was also quite strong, and the range he could explore was also quite wide. In this range, there were powerhouses from the assassin temple taking action, but even he couldn't sense them, which showed how powerful these assassins were. Long Haochen wasn't in a hurry at all. The longer it took, the more the assassins gained. This was a great thing. It was best to keep things calm like this. With the strength of the assassins, they could probably sweep away a tent every minute. In other words, almost every minute, there would be hundreds of demons dying in their hands. Come on. Long Haochen secretly encouraged them in his heart, but he still didn't have any intention of taking action. He didn't even let Kai move. He just looked up from time to time and looked at a demon god pillar that was emitting a greenish-black light not far away. He felt and probed with his spiritual force more seriously. Time passed minute by minute. Among the devil race, no one knew that at this time, an invisible massacre was shrouding them. One tent after another gradually became less and less breathing. Invisible figures shuttled back and forth outside the tents. Then they slowly penetrated inside. In the blink of an eye, more than 10 minutes had passed. Long Houchin's fists were already clenched, and his excitement was overflowing. In just these 10 minutes, their operation this time was already a big success. Their target was not ordinary demons. At this moment, suddenly, among the 7 shining demon god pillars, the centermost one shone brightly. Then, the other 6 demon god pillars also shone brightly. A mournful long howl suddenly sounded out, immediately alarming the entire fiend race camp. At this time, dozens of lights suddenly burst out in different directions in the demon camp. The nearest light to Long Houchin was less than 200 meters away. "We've been discovered." Long Houchin immediately realized the situation at this time. Although he didn't know how the demons discovered the assassins, it was time to retreat. Sure enough, all of the streaks of light that had risen up at the same time throughout the devilish camp erupted with dazzling halos before quickly transforming into streaks of light that silently disappeared into the air. It was clear that they had already entered a state of concealment and were beginning to flee. And under Long Houchin's gaze, the light closest to him and Kai, after rising into the air, instantly burst into unparalleled bright light. A large cloud of gray light instantly shrouded at least 4 or 5 demons' tents. Wherever the gray light passed, the earth seemed to have been bombarded by a meteor. In a violent roar, the several tents all disappeared. Then, the figure immediately submerged into the air and disappeared. Obviously, even if the assassins were discovered, they still wanted to make a profit before leaving. At this time, Long Houchin was not in the mood to pay much attention to this person. Instead, he quickly transmitted his voice to Kai, "Get ready to move. Later, you watch my action. After I fight with the enemy, you get ready to use the Grim Reaper scythe. I will pretend to retreat in defeat, and you will hide in the direction where I escape. When I fly to your side, I will counterattack. We will attack from the front and back, understand?" "Understood." Kai immediately agreed. At this time, she had somewhat understood what Long Houchin was going to do. Under the effect of the shrill howl and the dozens of lights that suddenly rose into the air, the entire demon camp had become chaotic at this time. Countless demons rushed out of the camp, and the demons on the periphery also woke up from their shock. Each and every one of them frantically searched for traces of the enemy. However, wanting to find dozens of people in this army of nearly 1 million was easier said than done. Moreover, these peak assassins had already entered stealth mode. Wanting to find them was no different from finding a needle in a haystack. At the core of the demon camp, the 7 demon god pillars burst with resplendent light. The 7 lights instantly fused into one, and then swept towards a direction in the sky. This clearly had a target, and the direction it was aimed at was precisely between the demon's barracks and the Exorcist mountain pass. Sure enough, where this light swept, several figures quietly appeared. They clearly hesitated for a moment, and then rushed towards the Exorcist mountain pass at an even faster speed. One after another, rays of light shot out from the demon camp, chasing towards the sky. At the same time, the 7 demon god pillars each shone with a strong light. 2 of them chased after the figures that appeared in the sky, while the other 5 simultaneously flew towards different directions of the barracks. Their bodies were constantly refracting the light from the demon god pillars, sweeping through the demon camp. Clearly, they were looking for those hidden assassins. Facing this situation, Long Houchin couldn't help but secretly sigh. The demons were really powerful. These 7 demon gods were able to react so quickly. Perhaps this surprise attack would cause some losses to the assassin temple. He just hoped that the losses wouldn't be too great. Originally, he was prepared to wait a little longer, but looking at the situation in front of him, he decided to act ahead of time. Quietly standing up, Long Houchin swept his eyes over the surrounding situation. Divine light flickered in the depths of his eyes, and he suddenly soared up. At the same time, resplendent golden light instantly burst forth, transforming into incomparably dazzling golden radiance that sprinkled in all directions. This was the sword meteor shower, a large expanse of golden light, with a sharp whistling sound and a dense aura of light, ruthlessly bombarded the demon camp. This attack of Long Houchen's wasn't pursuing attack power, but attack range. A large area of the barracks was destroyed by the sword meteor shower. However, the majority of the demons inside had already rushed out of the barracks and hurriedly resisted Long Houchen's attack with all their strength. After launching this attack, Long Houchen's body slightly paused in the air, and then he turned around and ran. He didn't fly, but instead madly ran on the ground. In his right hand, the golden ripple of light shone brightly, continuously sprinkling tens of thousands of golden lights, directly rushing into the barracks of the middle-level and low-level demons. Wherever Long Houchen passed, the demons were unlucky. Under the attack of his demon destruction flash, how could those rank 4 and rank 5 demons survive? What's more, there was the amplification effect of the ripple of light. What could be seen was a golden figure rushing out of the demon camp at an astonishing speed. Wherever he passed, a large expanse of golden light sprinkled from his body. Every time the light sprinkled, dozens of middle-level and low-level demons would immediately fall. The demon destruction flash had the powerful attack power of the ripple of light. With Long Houchen's current cultivation level, even rank 6 demons might not be able to resist it. Almost every demon in front of Long Houchen was instantly turned into a bloody sieve. In the face of that tyrannical golden light, no one could block Long Houchen for even a moment. Behind him, a large number of demons chased after Long Houchen. However, Long Houchen's speed was really too fast. With his rank 8 cultivation level, even if he ran on the ground, ordinary demons would not be able to catch up to him. This feeling of killing could really be described as carefree. Long Houchen could even feel his merit points skyrocketing at an astonishing speed. Every attack that was sprinkled out was worth at least hundreds of merit points, or even thousands of merit points. From time to time, he would also burst out with a sword star shower, reaping the lives of more demons. Of course, this situation would disappear when he rushed into the double-bladed demons camp. 10 double-bladed demons were equivalent to 1 merit point. Even if Long Houchen killed more, it would not be much of a reward. Long Houchen was the first person to rush into the demon camp alone to carry out such a massacre. This was because everyone knew that after such an attack, the possibility of escaping was infinitely close to zero. Wasn't this the case at the moment? Among the 5 demon gods that flew in different directions in the camp, the one closest to Long Houchen was a demon god shining with an intense green light. Identifying the direction in which Long Houchen had fled, he instantly accelerated in the air. While Long Houchen was wreaking havoc in the demon camp, he was also chasing after Long Houchen at an astonishing speed. Fortunately, the demons behind him stopped chasing. In their opinion, this human would not be able to escape the demon god's pursuit no matter what. Long Houchen had indeed been fleeing, but he had also been paying attention to the movements behind him. How could he not feel the pressure in the sky that was getting stronger and stronger? However, he acted as if he didn't notice it at all and continued to slaughter the surrounding demon army. Even when he was about to enter the range of the double-bladed demons camp, he suddenly made a turn and continued to rush horizontally towards the middle and low-level demons camp. Long Houchen was absolutely certain that he had obtained at least 100,000 merit points during this period of time he had been slaughtering his way through the city. Such a good opportunity only came once, so he naturally wanted to harvest more. No one knew that while Long Houchen was rampaging through the demon camp, in the sky, a figure hidden in the air was always following him. At the same time, it was also paying attention to the green figure that was chasing after Long Houchen. Finally, the demon god, whose whole body was shining with green light, caught up. A dazzling green light suddenly fell from the sky, blasting straight at Long Houchen. The speed of the green light was extremely fast, and it gradually enlarged in the sky. The outer layer of the green light was actually burning with black flames, and it was like a greenish-black meteor blasting towards Long Houchen. Just as it was about to hit, Long Houchen's body suddenly flashed with a golden light, and golden flames spurted out from his back. His whole body suddenly rushed forward at an astonishing speed, and wherever he passed, he forcibly cut a bloody path through the middle and low-level demons. In just a flash, he had rushed out 200 meters and forcibly avoided the attack that was blasting down from the sky. A violent rumble sounded on the ground, and the intense greenish-black flames enveloped an area with a diameter of 30 meters. Within the violent flames, there were also some demons that hadn't died at Long Houchen's hands. They didn't even have time to scream before they were turned into flying ash and disappeared into the air. After this attack, the demon god in the sky also revealed his figure. The demon god, whose whole body was shining with green light, looked very much like a human. He was mounted on a green-winged horse, and he himself was a handsome man over 2 meters tall. However, whether it was him or his horse, both had a pair of bewitching red eyes. Under the cover of the green light surrounding him, they looked even more strange. He wore a green armor, and there was a green spear hanging on the side of the saddle of the winged horse. The green demons were riding demons, and he was ranked 70th among the 72 demon god pillars. He, Flaming Lion Demon and Luo and Winged Ox Demon Sai Gong could be considered old friends of the Exorcist Mountain Pass. He had always been the demon god in charge of guarding this side. When the demon emperor dispatched troops to launch the holy war, he naturally wouldn't replace the 3 demon gods who were familiar with the situation here. Therefore, they had always been here. But when the demon army arrived, because of their own ranking, they had already been stripped of their position as the highest commander of the army. Of course, as demon gods, they still had an extremely high status in the demon army camp. How the demon gods discovered the Assassin Temple's sneak attack was a problem in the details. Moreover, this problem was something that the experts of the Assassin Temple couldn't solve no matter what. After more than 10 minutes of killing, more than 1,000 demons of the 6th step and above were killed. Demons were also living beings, and they could also breathe. After they died, their breathing would naturally stop. Because the experts of the Assassin Temple were moving from the outside, the tents that had stopped breathing were naturally on the periphery. The 7 great demon gods had always been relying on their demon god pillars to investigate the movements of the demon camp, even when they were cultivating or sleeping. Chapter 187. The strongest demon god sensed that there seemed to be a lack of breathing in the camp, so he increased the intensity of his investigation to sense the changes in the camp. With him taking action, the other fiend celestials naturally followed suit. Their action didn't matter, but the experts of the Assassin Temple immediately acted like birds startled by the mere twang of a bowstring and fled. In fact, if they could all calm down and hide at the first moment, the 7 demon gods wouldn't be completely sure that there was a surprise attack. After all, there were thousands of breaths missing in the camp, so it wouldn't be that easy to completely investigate. Perhaps the experts of the Assassin Temple would be able to achieve even more results. Unfortunately, it was too late to say anything now. Once the assassins made their move, the 7 demon gods immediately confirmed their guess and immediately took action. At this time, it was already too late to dispatch the demons to attack. The enemy's surprise attack was very sudden, and since the other party dared to launch a surprise attack, they naturally thought of a route of retreat. Therefore, the 7 demon gods didn't even discuss and immediately went all out to investigate the enemy. As long as they could find the enemy in the camp, the demons' officers and soldiers would naturally take action. The facts proved that the 7 demon gods' choice was very correct. Weren't the experts of the Assassin Temple, who were anxious to rush back to the Exorcist Mountain Pass, discovered in the sky at the first moment? 2 demon gods went to chase, while the other 5 demon gods each began to investigate in the camp. It was also at this time that Cyan Demon Knight, Air, saw a Long Houchen's figure. He couldn't see that the other party didn't have the slightest intention of concealing himself. After one attack, he turned tail and ran. Moreover, he brazenly charged into the demon camp from the ground. Air naturally recognized the gold foundation armor on Long Houchen's body. It would be strange if he didn't know that the other party was a rank 8 knight of the Knights Templars. However, this guy didn't want to live, right? Air even thought that Long Houchen was planning to commit suicide here. If he rushed into the demon camp with his own strength, even if every demon spat at him, he would be drowned. However, what shocked Sher the most was that this human knight had an ability that was extremely proficient in ranged attacks. It didn't seem to consume too much energy, and no one could stop him wherever he went. Moreover, his speed of escape wasn't slow at all. At this moment, the cyan demon-mounted devil realized that this human was extremely cunning. His golden armor was definitely very eye-catching in the night sky, which was why he did not fly up. He was afraid that he would attract the attention of more demon gods. He planned to rush out and then escape back to the Exorcist Mountain Pass. Not bad. Do you think I, the green goblin-mounted devil, am a fool? Shi'er increased his speed as he chased after Long Houchen. At the same time, he began to accumulate power. That attack just now was his probing attack. Long Houchen easily dodged, causing Shi'er's judgment of him to rise a few notches. However, he still didn't think that Long Houchen could escape. In terms of speed, the cyan demon-mounted devil had absolute confidence in itself. A powerful attack was launched at this time. Shi'er rode his cyan Pegasus and descended from the sky, directly blocking in front of Long Houchen. At the same time, a strong cyan light rose from him and his distant demon god pillar. Although Shi'er was only at the peak of the 8th step when fighting near his demon god pillar, he could display the strength of a 9th step demon god, just like snake demon god Andamari. In terms of strength, Shi'er was ranked 70th, a bit stronger than Andamari. Shi'er's hands made a grabbing motion in Long Houchen's direction. Suddenly, countless cyan lights burst out from his back, like a huge cyan cage, enveloping Long Houchen. Up to this point in the battle, the only weapon Long Houchen had used was the ripple of light. Seeing that Shi'er was already blocking in front of him, Long Houchen's face, hidden under the mask of the Golden Foundation battle armor, finally revealed a faint smile. He had been waiting for this moment. The reason why he hadn't made a move before was to wait for the right opportunity. He was a knight, not an assassin. If he entered the tent like an assassin to assassinate the demons, the possibility of him being discovered would be much higher. Since that was the case, why was he in such a hurry to make a move? During the day, Long Houchen had clearly seen what the 8 demon god pillars of the demons looked like. He hadn't seen many demon god pillars, but the first time he saw one was in the Exorcist Mountain Pass. His memory of the 3 great demon gods that had nearly caused him and Shang Lingxin to lose their lives on the battlefield was incomparably clear. The Green Goblin Rider was the weakest of the 3 great demon gods in his memory. Flaming Demon and Luoxian had already died. When Long Houchen had followed Shang Yu out of the Exorcist Mountain Pass, he had already thought of his target. That's right, the Green Goblin Rider was a bit stronger than the snake demon god Andamari. However, one was ranked 70th, while the other was ranked 72nd. How big of a difference could there be? At that time, when Long Houchen and the others killed the snake demon god, weren't they next to the demon god pillars? It was a bit stronger, but one mustn't forget that the current Long Houchen had far surpassed that time. He wanted to give the Exorcist Mountain Pass another big gift, and that was this demon god in front of him. How could she know that although he had made Long Houchen his target, he was in fact Long Houchen's target? Long Houchen's body, hidden in the Gold Foundation battle armor, had already turned completely transparent. It was the complete version of the body of Radiance. Facing Shi'er's attack, he simply raised the ripple of light in his right hand. A golden ring of light rippled out from the ripple of light. A strange scene appeared. When Shi'er's cyan cage encountered this golden ring of light, it unexpectedly disintegrated in an instant, as if it had never existed. Elemental Annihilation Ring of Light. The first time Long Houchen had seen this skill was when Gao Ingjia tested his team's strength. This skill only had one use, and that was to disintegrate all elemental fluctuations. It was one of the strongest 7th rank skills of the Guardian Knight. The reason why it was only at the 7th rank was because its effect was only for an instant and couldn't be sustained. Otherwise, it would be a terrifying domain-level ability. Moreover, it was comparable to any forbidden spell. However, even if it was only for an instant, it was enough to make Shi-Er's expression change. The Elemental Annihilation Halo was a 7th rank special skill of the Knights Templars. It wasn't something that just anyone could learn. Gao Ingjia's skill had left a deep impression on Long Houchen back then, so he had specifically found and learned it in the Illusion Cave. With his current cultivation of the 8th rank, using it was naturally as easy as using his own arm. After repelling Shi-Er's attack, Long Houchen made his move. He knew very well that he didn't have much time. If he wanted to kill Shi-Er, he could only go all out. He had to achieve his goal before the other demon gods discovered him. Otherwise, his life would be in danger. However, what he launched at this moment wasn't an attack. It was still from the ripple of light. A huge golden light barrier instantly spread out. In a short period of time, it actually expanded to a radius of 100 meters and a height of nearly 100 meters. It enveloped him, Shi-Er, and some of the low and mid-level demons around them. The Elemental Annihilation Halo startled Shi-Er, and he had some re-evaluation of Long Houchen's strength. At this moment, the golden light barrier that Long Houchen emitted stunned Shi-Er. This light barrier didn't have any power, and expanding it to such a large size would consume a lot of spiritual energy. What was he doing? Moreover, she also noticed that after this golden light barrier expanded, it emitted a faint buzzing sound. The distorted golden color made it impossible for him to see anything outside. For Shi-Er, as long as Long Houchen's light barrier couldn't isolate the connection between him and the demon god pillar, he wouldn't feel any sense of danger. But isolating the connection between the demon god pillar and the demon god pillar wasn't something that could be done easily. At least in the history of the demons and the humans, there had never been a situation where they were so close to the demon god pillar. While Long Houchen had released this light barrier, the Cyan demon rider, Shi-Er, hadn't been idle. Luoxian's death wasn't much of a blow to the other 7 demon gods, but it was definitely an important reminder. The 52nd ranked Flaming Lion Demon hadn't even been able to use his best ability before dying in front of the Exorcist Mountain Pass. To the other demon gods, this was quite a big shock. Therefore, Shi didn't dare to be careless when facing Long Houchen, a rank 8 knight. When Long Houchen released the expanded Holy Light Barrier, she also took out the Cyan Spear on the saddle bridge, pointed it towards the sky, and let out a strange long cry. Immediately after, a strange scene appeared. An intense cyan light suddenly erupted from Shi-Er's body. This cyan light soared into the sky and directly struck Long Houchen's Holy Light Barrier, creating a large hole. However, the Holy Light Barrier didn't break, nor did it produce any resistance. The Cyan Demon Rider, Shi-Er, had already begun to undergo an earth-shattering transformation. Shi was 2 meters tall, and his appearance could definitely be considered handsome among the demons. However, at this moment, his expression quickly turned malevolent. The Cyan Pegasus beneath him spread its wings, and its enormous body seemed to melt as it fused with Shi-Er's body. One could clearly see his cyan armor that looked like muscles rapidly covering Shi-Er's body. What was even more disgusting was that on this cyan armor, there were thick veins that seemed to be constantly pulsating. Shi-Er's body had clearly expanded a lot, and his scarlet eyes flickered with an ominous glint. On his forehead, 3 long spiral-shaped horns grew out, and cyan light lingered on them. His appearance wasn't any stronger than that of the snake demon god Andamari. In fact, he looked even more malevolent. This was the demon god transformation that the demon god had used with the demon god pillar. Shi-Er's strength had instantly risen to the 9th tier. When the flaming lion demon Enluo had died, he hadn't even used the demon god transformation. Shi didn't want to repeat that mistake. As long as he was in the demon god transformation state, he had many life-saving techniques that he could use. Not to mention that his opponent's aura was only at the 8th tier. Even if he was at the 9th tier, he was confident that he could escape unscathed. Long Houchin was very clear about what he had to do now. They were able to kill Andamari because Andamari had been seriously injured after clashing with the Anaconda King and had used all his trump cards, giving them a chance. But the current Shi-Er was in his peak condition and was equivalent to 11 strengthened versions of Andamari, a 9th-tier powerhouse, and with the support of the demon god Pillar, what gave Long Houchin the confidence to kill him. In a one-on-one situation, the chances of him defeating Shi-Er were infinitely close to 0. The difference between the 8th tier and the 9th tier was obvious. However, Long Houchin still did it, which meant that he had already prepared for everything. While Shi was in the demon god transformation state, Long Houchin didn't stay idle. The ripple of light quietly disappeared, and, at the same time, an orange-red light exploded from his left arm. All the middle and low-level demons within the range of the golden light were instantly smashed into pieces. Outside the light screen, the middle and low-level demons were still rushing in quickly, and the golden light screen he had used earlier had no power to stop them at all. What was this golden light screen? To be precise, it couldn't even be considered a technique, and it wasn't a holy light screen either. Instead, it was a technique that Long Houchin had developed during this period of time. This technique only had one function, and that was to block vision. Simply put, this was a tangible holy light screen without any actual defensive or amplification effects. Any attack or object could easily pass through it, except vision. Speaking of which, it wasn't difficult to use this technique. Long Houchin's inspiration came from his ripple of light. If the vibration frequency of the ripple of light was lower, and at the same time, the release of spiritual power was more subtle, then he would achieve his goal. He had experimented more than once, and it turned out that his creation was successful. Would the technique that Long Houchin painstakingly created be useless? Of course not. He had tailor-made it for himself. This was also a helpless move. Right now, his identity couldn't be exposed, but the enemy didn't care about this. When he encountered a strong opponent, if he couldn't display his full strength, wouldn't he be restricted? Therefore, this light screen wasn't targeted at Shi at all, but at Long Houchin himself. It was specifically used to conceal his own ability. What the Cyan Demon Rider didn't know was that when Long Houchin used this light screen, it meant that Long Houchin was determined to kill him. Shi shook the cyan spear in his hand, and suddenly, the surrounding air violently distorted. At the same time, he let out an angry roar, stopping the mid and low-level demons that were trying to enter the golden light screen. If these demons rushed in, not only would they not be able to help, but they would also suffer great losses. With Long Houchin and Shi-Er's cultivation, even the aftermath of their battle wasn't something that the mid and low-level demons could contend against. With a thrust of the spear, 9 cyan lights attacked Long Houchin. Each of these 9 cyan lights was only as thick as a chopstick and looked much weaker than Shi-Er's previous attack. This was the result of the large compression of spiritual power. After all, Shi was at the 8th stage, and even if he used Demon God transformation to reach the 9th stage, he still couldn't use the power of a domain. However, it greatly improved his strength in other aspects. For example, the attack in front of him was already equivalent to the power of the human Ling Gang. This powerful attack from the Ling Gang was no longer a probing attack, but a tyrannical move that could only be used after Demon God transformation. In the face of such an attack, Long Houchin didn't panic. A strong golden light suddenly lit up behind him, and his body shot out like lightning, rushing towards the 9 cyan lights. Want to dodge? The Cyan Demon Rider had been on the battlefield for many years and had faced many human powerhouses. With this charge from Long Houchin, he immediately determined his opponent's goal. Lightspeed Flash was extremely fast, and it might not be faster than spiritual power. Shi-Er's response was very simple. 9 by 9 converged into 1, and the 9 rays of green light instantly converged, transforming into 1 and directly bombarding Long Houchin. At this moment, something that the Cyan Demon Rider never expected happened. With a flash of purple light, Long Houchin, who was about to be hit by the 9 Ling Gang attacks, disappeared into thin air. That's right. He disappeared, not invisibility. This was because the tyrannical Ling gang directly disappeared from the position where Long Haochen had rushed over, passing through the golden light shield and landing outside. A violent roar was heard. The Cyan Demon Rider's full power attack was terrifying. This was the demons' camp, and the unlucky ones were the middle and low-level demons. Unfortunately, the demons killed by Sheer couldn't be counted in Long Haochen's merit. Disappeared? Space travel? But how did he complete the space shuttle when I was giving him so much pressure? At this moment, Shi-Er's eyes were filled with shock. He could not believe that a Type 8 human could use his own strength to complete the profound art of space travel. And in the middle of a battle, from what he remembered, even if a Type 9 powerhouse wanted to perform space travel, it was impossible to do so while being locked on by the opponent. During a battle, the huge spiritual power fluctuations would cause chaos in space, and if one was not careful, one could get lost in space. No matter how strong one was, it would be impossible to return to this world. However, Long Haochen had disappeared just like that, without leaving a trace. The golden light shield also started to fade. He escaped? Shi-Er put down the spear in his hand, but he was still cautious and did not remove his demon god transformation. Just as the Cyan Demon Rider was about to step out of the golden light shield, suddenly, the golden light became intense again, and the translucent light returned to normal. Everything in the outside world returned to its original state. Shi-Er suddenly turned around, and the spear in his hand swept out subconsciously. A green light shot out, and everywhere it passed, there was a series of tearing sounds. Yes, his opponent had returned. However, when the Cyan Demon Rider saw his opponent again, his eyes could not help but reveal a hint of fear. Long Haochen's armor was no longer gold, but a dazzling purplish gold. On his chest, shoulders, and knees, there was a sinister head, each slightly different from the other. The difference was in the horns of the heads. The mask on his face also turned purplish gold, and there were 9 more golden patterns on his forehead. Behind him, for huge purplish gold wings spread open, and under the sudden pressure of an incomparably terrifying aura, the demon god, Shi-Er actually felt it difficult to breathe. Under the purplish gold cover, Long Haochen held a sword in each hand. In his left hand, the heavy sword shone with a green light, while in his right hand, the heavy sword shone with an orange light. Facing the green light from Shi-Er's spear, Long Haochen brazenly stepped forward with his left foot. Immediately after, an extremely tyrannical and distorted light rippled from his body. Terrifying spiritual power and elemental fluctuations swept across a large area like a tsunami. Within the light shield, the light was distorted, and outside the shield, the low and mid-level demons were almost completely swept away, turning into powder. 5 Attribute Chaos Elemental Stripping. This was the tyrannical skill that Hao Yue was most proficient in. The green light that Shi-Er had unleashed was almost instantly destroyed, and his body was also enveloped in this tyrannical, distorted light. Although he wasn't truly injured by the chaos elemental stripping, the terrifying chaos elemental stripping still crazily cut at his body, greatly consuming his spiritual power. More importantly, Shi-Er's speed was greatly reduced within this chaos elemental stripping. He could only use all his strength to resist the impact of the chaos elemental stripping. If he wanted to move, it would consume even more spiritual power, and he definitely couldn't be fast. It was also at this moment that Long Haochen moved. His left foot abruptly took a step forward, and the aria of the Goddess of Light in his right hand, which had already been unsealed, used the simplest method to chop down on Shi-Er's head. This seemingly simple attack was extremely tyrannical in Shi-Er's eyes. The incomparably sharp sword intent was completely contained within the layer of orange on the blade. The extremely terrifying spiritual energy fluctuation had completely disappeared and was now contained within. Even the surrounding chaos elemental stripping quickly parted due to this attack, making a path for Long Haochen's attack. At this moment, the situation that the Cyan Devil Rider was facing was equivalent to countless chaos elemental stripping pressing down on his body, and the only way out was through Long Houchen's brazen slash. Roar! Shi-Er's malevolent face let out a mournful roar, and the spear in his hand suddenly swung upwards. In that instant, his spear completely turned a dazzling dark green. Countless streams of black air instantly condensed on the tip of the spear, and it directly collided with the aura of the goddess of light. Ding! A crisp sound rang out. Long Houchen and his aura of the goddess of light were unexpectedly lifted up by the spear. As if he had been electrocuted, Shi-Er's body fiercely spasmed, and a small piece of the tip of the spear in his hand broke off. Just as he heaved a sigh of relief and was about to retreat, Long Houchen, who was in midair, swept over like a tornado. This time it was not one sword but two swords. Although it was impossible for Long Houchen to display his swift and fierce sword intent under such concentrated attacks, the aura of the goddess of light, Blue Rain, and Hibiscus of Light, in addition to the adamantine foundation battle armor and the amplification from Haoyue, had completely surpassed Shi-Er's strength. And what he was displaying was the battle-killing revolving sword created by his father, the Knight of the Seal Long Xingwu. The complete version of the battle-killing revolving sword. When Long Houchen's cultivation rose to the 8th step, he was able to display the full power of this attack. He had already comprehended the true essence of the battle-killing revolving sword. The profound meaning of this attack was to make it impossible for the enemy to dodge or evade, to borrow the enemy's strength to strike back, and to strangle them to death. Clang, clang. Under the two crisp sounds of collision, Shi-Er's body took half a step back, but there was a hint of surprise in his eyes. This was because he discovered that although Long Houchen's two swords were powerful, there was a huge difference in the power that erupted from the two heavy swords. But compared to the previous sword that was full of sword intent, there was still a big gap. It must be known that Long Houchen's Shura slash, which was powered by sword intent, had already injured the meridians in Shi-Er's arms. He was very clear that if it wasn't for the amplification from the demon god transformation, it would have been very difficult for him to withstand that sword just now. His strength has weakened? Is he also an arrow at the end of its flight? This was the thought that came to Shi-Er's mind. And it was also at this time that the power of the battle-killing revolving sword was displayed. Dense sounds of collision rang out, and terrifying spiritual power continuously spread out from the collision between the two. Now, no mid- or low-level demons dared to approach the range of their battle. The previous painful lesson had told them that this was a real land of death. Shi-Er's joy only lasted for a moment before it turned into panic and shock. He was horrified to find that Long Houchen, who was spinning rapidly in the air, had produced a strong suction force that was pulling his body. He couldn't escape even if he wanted to, and could only use all his strength to resist. However, every time he resisted, he could feel that part of the power in his spear would be absorbed by his opponent's two swords. And when Long Houchen's next round of attacks came, the attack power that erupted from his two swords would become a bit stronger. Not only was this kind of attack continuously consuming his energy, but it was also going to completely destroy him. How could Shi-Er not panic with such a skill? Even though this was the demon camp, even though he had the demon god pillar by his side, at this moment, he was the only one facing Long Houchen. The other demon gods had gone to chase the powerhouses of the Assassin Temple. Even if they discovered that something was wrong with his side, it would take them some time to rush over. What's more, the battlefield on their side was completely blocked by that golden light. From the looks of it, this golden light only seemed to be isolating the middle and low-level demons. A demon god that was enveloped by the light of the demon god pillar was fighting against an adamantine foundation knight. It seemed that the demon god should not be at a disadvantage. Therefore, the possibility of other demon gods coming to rescue, sure, it was very small, at least for now. Shi-Er's spiritual power fluctuations increased with Long Houchen's, but only he knew that he was quickly approaching his limit. Once he broke through his limit, his resistance would plummet, and that would be the time of his death. The armor that the winged horse transformed into could not block those two epic-grade heavy swords no matter what. The Cyan Demon Rider didn't know how Long Haochen promoted his cultivation to rank 9, but compared to Long Haochen, he was at a huge disadvantage in terms of equipment. The demon god pillar was the strongest equipment of a demon god, comparable to a divine artifact. But this equipment had already helped Shi'er to rank 9. There were other special abilities. But what about Long Haochen's body? He had already displayed at least 3 epic-grade equipment, and that didn't include the layer of purple gold on his body. However, Shi'er didn't have the time or energy to analyze this. The cyan spear in his hand already had countless cracks, and it could collapse at any time. At this moment, Shi'er suddenly roared. He no longer paid attention to Long Haochen's attack, and the cyan spear in his hand suddenly stabbed towards Long Haochen's body, attacking the enemy's weakness, a method that would injure both sides. However, the battle-killing revolving sword technique was one of Long Xingyu's most powerful, profound skills. Long Haochen had already comprehended the essence of the technique, so how could he be hurt by the battle-killing revolving sword? The spinning momentum did not change. 2 rays of light, one cyan and one red, fiercely slashed at Shi'er's body, forcibly cutting through his 2 swords. In that terrifying whirlwind, Shi'er's body was twisted into pieces at an astonishing speed. His thrusting spear directly passed by Long Haochen's body, not piercing Long Haochen's body at all. How terrifying was the defensive power of the fine gold foundation battle armor, combined with Hao Yue's fusion. It was enough to raise the defense of the fine gold foundation battle armor to the level of a divine artifact. In addition, the battle-killing revolving sword would produce a powerful airflow around Long Haochen's body. The longer it lasted, the more tyrannical this Ling Gang level airflow would become. With the combined defense of the 2, Shi'er's attack only caused a string of sparks on Long Haochen's body before flashing away. But was the Cyan Demon Rider really dead? Think about the snake demon god Andamari. How did Andamari kill the Anaconda King that was stronger than him? He used the cicada shedding carapace. And at this moment, the Cyan Demon Rider was using the same move that Andamari had used before. A streak of cyan light split in almost an instant. Shui Air and his spear were torn to pieces, but another Shui Air appeared behind him. The demon god's incarnation. A normal avatar would split its body and return to the demon god pillar. But at this moment, Shi'er did not dare. Because the suction force on Long Haochen's battle-killing revolving sword was too strong. He did not dare to gamble. Under normal circumstances, it was very likely that he would not be able to return to his original body. Therefore, he could only forcefully complete this ability. There was no doubt that this would cause more damage to his source. At this moment, he had already returned to his original handsome appearance, but his face was deathly pale, and the scarlet in his eyes was much dimmer. Without any hesitation, Shi'er, who had left the battlefield, turned and ran. Even for a demon god, it was not easy to use the cicada shedding carapace ability. It was also a huge consumption for them. After using this ability, he would not be able to use the demon god transformation for a short period of time. Moreover, all the equipment on his body would disappear. His strength would also decrease. Unless he used the demon disintegration technique, he would not be able to return to his peak state. Back then, Long Haochen and the others had killed the snake demon god in such a situation. It was already afraid. In front of the battle-killing revolving sword that Long Haochen had used in his strongest state, he did not even have the strength to fight back. Everyone had borrowed external forces to advance to the 9th rank. How could he compare to a 9th rank favored? It was not only afraid because of the strength Long Haochen had displayed, but also because of the aura he was releasing. Shi'er could clearly tell that Long Haochen's aura had elements of Hao Yue. In the face of such a situation, why would he not run? As long as he could send the news back and let the other demon gods join forces with him to kill Long Haochen, this merit would be enough for the Demon Emperor to favor him and directly promote him to the top 36 demon gods. If the Demon Emperor wanted to raise the strength of a demon god, he had a lot of means. However, these ideas in the Cyan demon-mounted devil's mind all had a major premise, and that was that he had to leave alive and inform the other demon gods. Just as he was about to turn and run, the buzzing sound of the golden light barrier released by Long Houchen suddenly became more intense. At this moment, the golden light barrier not only blocked vision, but also sound. Even if Shi-Er shouted, the outside would definitely not be able to hear him. Since he had used his original strength, Long Houchen was prepared for all contingencies and would not give the enemy any chance. A pitch-black light suddenly appeared in mid-air without any warning on the path that Shi-Er had to take. This light looked so poignant and beautiful, like a long and narrow leaf falling from the sky in the middle of the night. Naturally, it carried a sense of desolation. Death God 7 Ultimate, first ultimate, Death's Downfall. Kai-Er had finally made her move. When Long Houchen had brought you here, Kai had been hiding at the side, watching the battle. She was waiting for Long Houchen's signal. Kai had never expected that Long Houchen's current strength would actually be enough to fight a demon god head-on, even if the demon god was only at the peak of the 8th rank. Not only was a head-on clash, but Long Houchen was also able to win. Kai now truly understood why a great-grandfather would be jealous of Long Houchen's advancement. Long Houchen's position as the Sacred Knight leader was definitely well-deserved. Among the 8th rank Sacred Knight leaders, who could compare to him? Who could fuse with Hao Yue? Shi-Er did not know what Long Houchen had done, but Kai was very clear. When Shi-Er had launched that all-out attack, Long Houchen naturally did not rely on his own strength to escape into space. His cultivation was still insufficient to do so. He had been transported away by Hao Yue. Through the bloodline contract between Long Houchen and Hao Yue, Long Houchen was directly teleported to the plane that Hao Yue was in, and then immediately began to fuse with it. At the same time, he returned with the 2 divine swords. The only thing that surprised and puzzled Kai-Er was Blue Rain and Hibiscus of Light. She recognized the appearance of this divine sword, but its power and color had undergone an earth-shattering change. It was actually also powerful at the epic rank. Silently watching the battle below, Kai deeply felt the gap between her and Long Houchen. Perhaps, with the 7 absolutes of death, she could still defeat Long Houchen in terms of explosive power, but Long Houchen had countless ways to escape from the battle. She, who had used the 7 absolutes of death, had to pay a terrifying price. As Kai-Er pondered, she felt deeply gratified. The man she liked was so powerful that no one could compare to him. She watched Long Houchen display his invincible might and fight the green goblin mounted devil. Although Kai was not as infatuated as a love-struck fool, she could not help but feel even more emotional. Of course, as the reincarnation saintess, she would not let her emotions affect her judgment of the battlefield. The moment Shi-Er's clone was killed by the fighting-killing revolving sword, Kai knew that it was time for her to make a move.